mist beads on the small grasses of the TEPUI summit meadows, and tonight we walk slowly across this high, quiet world above the forest clouds. Settle in and let your breathing become as unhurried as the pale wind moving over the stone. Around you, the air feels cool and rinsed clean, carrying the faint scent of wet rock, moss, and flowers, so small they seem almost like thoughts. We are far above the lowland rainforest now, on one of the old table mountains of the Guiana Shield, where the Tepui summit meadows rest like islands in the sky. The ground beneath your feet is soft in places, firm in others, and dark with peat that has gathered slowly through ages of rain. Water shines everywhere here. It gathers in shallow cups, slips through reddish gravel, and pauses in the narrow leaves of plants that have learned to live with almost nothing. The light is gentle on the summit, never quite harsh, because mist is always near. It folds around the meadow in slow, pale layers, hiding one patch of stone while revealing another. You can hear it more than you expect, not as a sound of its own, but as a hush over everything else. Even the wind seems careful here, brushing the grasses without bending them too far. As we move deeper into the Tepui summit meadows, you begin to notice how ancient the stillness feels, as though the mountain has been holding its breath for longer than memory. These summits are remnants of very old sandstone, shaped by rain, time, and separation from the lands below. They stand with steep sides and flat crowns, and because they are so isolated, life has taken a quiet path here. Plants have become particular, patient, and local, belonging to this height, this weather, this stone. You can imagine the rain arriving softly, as it often does, with no need for drama. It beads on your sleeves, cool against your skin, and darkens the stone until every crack becomes visible. The meadow drinks slowly, though the soil is poor and thin. Much of the water runs away, slipping toward hidden gullies and clear falls that descend through cloud, while the plants hold what they can in waxy leaves, swollen stems, and careful roots. Here the meadow does not look like a pasture. It is more delicate than that, more intricate, more watchful. Low shrubs spread close to the ground, their leaves small and tough against wind and rain. Cushion plants make rounded islands, bright with green and silver, while tiny orchids and bell-shaped flowers appear between stones as if they had been placed there one by one. You lean closer, and the whole landscape becomes smaller, fuller, and more alive. The Tepui summit meadows are quiet because everything here grows slowly. Nutrients wash away in the constant rain, and the sandstone gives little back. So the plants have learned restraint. Some catch insects in folded leaves or slick pitchers, not with any sense of threat, but as part of the meadow's soft chemistry. In this high place, even hunger feels almost silent, translated into dew, color, and the faintest movement of a trapped drop. We keep walking, and the mist opens for a moment, showing the edge of the summit far ahead. Beyond it, clouds drift below us, white and slow, as though the sky has settled at the mountain's feet. You may feel the strangeness of standing above weather, while wet grasses brush your ankles and cool air moves along your face. The world below is hidden, but it has not vanished. It is simply resting under cloud. And as we continue across this quiet upper world, the meadow begins to show how water shapes everything here. It does not carve quickly. It returns again and again, drop after drop, softening stone, widening seams, and carrying away grains, so fine they seem like powdered thyme. The surface under us is marked with shallow pools, dark channels, and smooth slabs where rain has polished the sandstone to a muted sheen. In the Tepui summit meadows, water is both visitor and resident. It arrives from cloud, lingers in moss, slips beneath roots, and gathers in black water pools stained by old plant matter. When you look into one of these pools, the surface reflects a pale sky, but below that reflection there is tea-colored depth. A tiny ripple moves outward from something unseen. Then the water becomes still again. The soil is often acidic and lean, and that quiet poverty gives the summit its character. Nothing wastes energy here. Leaves are narrow, leathery, or curled. Roots search close to the surface. Mosses hold moisture like small green sponges. while lichens cling to exposed stone in faded yellow, grey, and pale blue. You can smell the clean mineral scent of rainwater mixed with the earthy sweetness of peat. We pause beside a cluster of pitcher plants, their cups open to the sky. Rain has filled them part way, and their surfaces shine in the dim light. They are beautiful in a still, functional way, shaped by the need to gather what the ground cannot give. Around them, the grasses bend and rise with each breath of wind, and the meadow seems to breathe with you. There are few large sounds on the summit. No heavy canopy creaks overhead. No broad river presses nearby. Instead, you hear the small, close things, water ticking from leaf tips, wind passing through low stems, the soft press of your steps in damp ground. These sounds make the silence feel deeper, not empty, but held open. Below this softness, the stone remains very old, and we let our attention sink toward it. The TEPUI summit meadows rest on rocks that belong to some of the oldest exposed landscapes on Earth, weathered through immense spans of time. Sand once settled, hardened, lifted, and endured until rain and erosion left these high plateaus standing apart. Their cliffs rise like quiet walls from the forest, but up here, their surfaces become intimate under your hand. If you kneel and touch the sandstone, it feels cool and faintly rough, even when polished by rain. Grains press against your fingertips. Small dark lines mark where water has passed again and again, choosing the same slight weakness in the rock. Over ages, those small choices become runnels, basins, and miniature valleys, and the summit meadow arranges itself around them without hurry. You can feel how separation matters here. Each tepui is like an island, not surrounded by sea, but by air, cliff, and forest, far below. Plants and animals that reach these summits may remain apart for so long that they become their own local forms. The meadow is not just high, it is secluded, and its quietness comes partly from that distance. We walk on, and the clouds draw close again, narrowing the world to a few yards of wet grass and dark stone. The air touches your cheeks with a cool, steady dampness. A small flower appears at the edge of the path, pale against black peat, its petals holding beads of water like glass. You notice it because there is little here to distract you, and the mountain seems to ask for that kind of attention. As the mist thickens, we move into a gentler layer of the summit, where the meadow becomes a mosaic of wet places and drier rises. The TEPUI summit meadows are never only one thing. They shift from mossy hollows to stony pavements, from shallow pools to low thickets, from open grass to little gardens tucked beside rock. Each few steps changes the ground beneath you. This is part of their quiet beauty. The summit may seem flat from far away, but up close, it is full of small relief. A ridge no higher than your ankle can change drainage, light, and the plants that settle there. A crack in the sandstone can hold enough moisture for moss. A shallow hollow can become a dark pool where the sky lies still. You begin to sense that the meadow is made of edges. Wet meets dry, stone meets peat, cloud meets grass, open air meets the shelter of a low shrub. In those gentle boundaries, life finds room to be precise. One plant prefers the constant seep of water. Another waits on slightly raised ground, where roots are damp but not drowned. The colors are subdued, but they deepen as your eyes settle. Greens move from bright moss to olive leaf to almost black wet stems. The stone carries reds, browns, and grey softened by water. Some flowers are white or yellow, and a few glow with quiet pink or violet, small enough that you might miss them if we hurried. But we are not hurrying. And as we walk farther across this high meadow, the living world grows smaller and more detailed. The TEPUI summit meadows hold insects, frogs, spiders, and birds that move with the same quiet scale as the plants around them. You may notice a small shape shifting near a leaf, then stillness again. A wing flickers once. A throat pulses softly in the wet air. Many summit creatures are adapted to narrow conditions, living where cool temperatures, frequent rain, and poor soils shape every day. Some frogs on Tepuis are known for their close ties to these high isolated environments, using damp moss, leaf axils, and hidden crevices rather than broad ponds. Their lives are modest and specific. They fit into the mountain the way water fits into stone. You do not need to see every creature to feel their presence. The meadow holds them in small shelters, beneath leaves, under stones, inside the wet green folds of plants. Their world is close to the ground, patterned by moisture and shadow. When the mist lowers, it gives them cover, and it gives us a softer way of imagining them. A bird call may come from somewhere beyond sight, thin and clear, then disappear into cloud. The sound does not break the quiet. It simply draws a line through it, brief and delicate. You listen, and the air seems larger after the call fades, as though silence has gently returned to its full size. Here in the TEPUI summit meadows, even movement can feel like stillness. A drop slides down a leaf. A small insect adjusts its legs. Grass leans, pauses, and rises again. The meadow continues its slow exchanges of water, light, and minerals, while the mountain remains beneath it all, patient and worn, holding this small world above the forest. And as the light begins to soften toward evening, we let the summit become quieter around us. The clouds are lower now, or perhaps we are simply more aware of them. They pass close enough to hide the horizon, and the meadow no longer feels like a place with distance. It feels like a room made of mist, open above, resting on stone. The air seems to thicken with silver, and each breath feels cool, damp, and very clean. You can almost taste the stone in it, a faint mineral softness carried by cloud. Around us, the TEPUI summit meadows settle into evening without hurry, as though daylight is not ending, but simply dissolving into water. We stand beside a low patch of grasses where droplets gather along every blade. They make the meadow glitter quietly, not with brightness, but with the patient shine of things that have accepted rain as part of themselves. When you lower your eyes, the world becomes intimate again. There are beads of water, fine hairs on stems, tiny leaves pressed close to peat, and small dark hollows where moisture has gathered through the day. The summit does not offer wide drama now. It offers nearness. The distant cliffs are hidden, the lower forest is hidden, and the sky itself seems to have moved down among the plants. You can feel the boundary between air and cloud becoming less certain, and your skin carries that cool uncertainty like a soft veil. In the TEPUI summit meadows, evening arrives through dampness first. Temperature falls by degrees, and the wet surfaces hold the change. Stone cools underfoot, mosses darken. The shallow pools lose their pale reflections and become little windows into tea-colored stillness. You can hear water again, not loudly, but as a scattered ticking from leaves, stones, and the edges of pools. We move carefully across a stretch of flat rock where rain has carved slight channels into the sandstone. These channels are narrow enough to miss in brighter light, but now they gleam with thin threads of water. Each thread follows an ancient habit. Each one is part of the same slow shaping that has made this summit meadow so intricate. The stone beneath the TEPUI summit meadows has been washed by more rains than any listener could count. Every cloud that breaks here takes a little with it, dissolving, lifting, carrying grains away toward the cliffs. The process is gentle in each moment, almost too gentle to notice. Yet over deep time, gentleness becomes geography. You can feel that lesson under your feet. Nothing here needs haste to change the world. Rain returns. Wind returns. Roots enter small openings. Water freezes rarely here, but it rests, seeps, stains, and pulls. The summit slowly gives itself to the sky, grain by grain, while the meadow makes a home on the surface of that giving. We pause where a shallow basin holds dark water edged with moss. The surface is still enough to mirror a pale patch of cloud. When you lean closer, the reflection shifts with your breath, and the cloud trembles, then settles again. Under the surface, a few thin stems lie half submerged, stained brown by tannins from old leaves and peat. These summit waters are often lean and acidic. They do not carry the richness of lowland rivers. They carry the memory of plants, the chemistry of sandstone, and the soft color of slow decomposition. In their quiet way, they teach the meadow restraint. Life here cannot sprawl endlessly. It must become exact. We walk on, and the grasses brush softly against your legs. The sensation is light, almost feathery, though the leaves themselves are tough from weather. Many plants here have surfaces that shed water or hold it with great care. Some leaves are waxed, some are narrow, some press low to avoid the steady pull of wind across the open summit. The TEPUI summit meadows can seem fragile, but they are not helpless. They are finely matched to this place. Their strength is not in height or speed, but in persistence. A cushion plant may spread slowly across a stone over years, building its own little climate close to the ground. A moss may hold enough water to shelter a seedling. A small flowering stalk may rise only when the season allows. You begin to notice how the meadow keeps its life close. There are few tall forms to interrupt the wind. Much of the vegetation rests below the knee, forming textures rather than walls. This gives the summit a feeling of openness, even when mist has closed the view. You can look down and see entire landscapes within the span of your hands. Here, a tuft of grass rises from black peat. There, a patch of reddish stone shows through. Beyond it, tiny rosettes cluster around a wet seam, each leaf arranged to catch what little the place offers. The scale is small, but the design is patient and complete. We slow down because the meadow asks us to see in its own size, and as the evening mist draws nearer, the air becomes full of softened edges. Nothing appears all at once. A stone emerges, then fades behind vapor. A plant stands clear for a moment, then becomes only a darker shape inside grey. Your eyes stop reaching into distance, and your attention rests where your feet are. This is one of the gifts of the TEPUI summit meadows. They quiet the mind by taking away excess horizon. They make the near world enough. The sound of your breathing, the chill of your sleeves, the clean damp smell rising from moss and stone, all of it comes forward gently. You are not asked to search for anything large. We pass through a low swale where water has gathered beneath the grasses. The ground gives slightly, then steadies. Peat holds your step with the soft resistance, and when your foot lifts, water glints in the pressed place for a moment. The summit stores rain this way, not in deep soil, but in shallow living sponges of moss, roots, and dark organic matter. Peat forms slowly in wet places where plant material breaks down only partly. On these high summits, cool, damp conditions can slow decay, allowing layers to gather over long stretches of time. You can think of it as the meadow keeping its own memory, not in words, but in compressed leaves, fibers, and darkened water. Every step crosses something accumulated. The smell changes in the swale. It becomes earthier, softer, almost sweet beneath the mineral scent of rain. You breathe it in without needing to name it. It is the scent of wet plant matter resting in cool air, of moss keeping water, of a summit that is both exposed to sky and sheltered by its own dampness. A few pale flowers lift above the grasses, their stems thin and steady. Their petals are simple, holding droplets along their edges. You may imagine them opening in brief windows of light, visited by small insects that know this high place well. Pollination here can be quiet and occasional, shaped by weather that often hides the sun and wind that can cross the plateau without warning. Still, the meadow continues. It does not need abundance in the way a lowland forest might show abundance. It works with narrower possibilities. A warm hour, a dry ledge, a visiting insect, a seed caught in a crack, all become enough. The TEPUI summit meadows are landscapes of enoughness, and that can feel deeply peaceful when we let it. We continue toward a stony rise, and the ground becomes firmer underfoot. Here the vegetation thins, revealing flat sandstone broken into shallow steps and plates. Water lies in the seams. Lichens spread across the surface in pale maps, their colors softened by the wet evening. The rock feels old even before we remember its age. The Guiana Shield, which holds many tepuis, is among the ancient geological regions of the world. Its rocks have endured through spans that make ordinary history feel like breath on glass. Up here, you do not need to understand all of that time to feel it. You only need to touch the stone and notice how quietly it remains. We sit for a while on a dry edge of rock, with the meadow around us and cloud moving through the dim air. The stone is cool beneath you. The wind touches one side of your face, then eases. Somewhere nearby, water finds a hidden drop and falls a short distance with a soft repeating sound. This is not the roar of a waterfall yet. It is only a small descent, a private movement between stones. The TEPUI summit meadows are full of such small departures. Water gathers, slips, and disappears, beginning journeys that may later become streams, cascades, and long falls down the cliffs. But here at the top, every journey begins quietly. As we rise again and walk, the mist parts just enough to show a darker line ahead. It is a shallow channel cut through the meadow, where water has found a more certain path. The grasses lean toward it, moss thickens along its edges. The stones inside are smooth and reddish-brown, and the water moves over them with a soft, glassy sound. You follow beside it, slowly, letting its pace set your own. The channel is not deep. It is only a narrow thread through the summit, but it gives direction to the wetness around it. Small leaves overhang its sides. A route crosses from one bank to the other. The water folds around it without impatience. In places like this, erosion is not an event. It is a habit. The streamlet carries fine grains, organic stains and dissolved minerals, deepening its route through repetition. On a TEPUI summit, where rain is frequent and soil is limited, water can draw clear lines through the landscape. Yet, even those lines feel soft when we walk beside them in evening mist. The channel leads us through another patch of meadow, and the light continues to fade. There is still no darkness, only a dim blue-grey quiet. The summit seems suspended between day and night. Clouds move low enough that their edges brush the grasses, and you may feel the coolness gathering at your wrists and collar. A small frog calls once from somewhere hidden in wet vegetation. The sound is delicate, almost like a drop striking hollow stone. We do not search for it. We let it remain unseen, because much of this landscape lives best that way, folded into moss, tucked beneath leaves, present without display. The call fades, and the meadow closes gently around it. Some TEPUI animals have evolved in remarkable isolation, shaped by summit climates and the barriers of cliffs. Their ranges may be small, sometimes tied to a single mountain or a group of neighboring summits. That fact can sound precise and scientific, but when you stand here in cloud, it feels more like intimacy. Life has stayed close to home. You look around at the wet grasses and low shrubs, and home becomes a very particular thing. It is a certain elevation, a certain pattern of rain, a certain chemistry in the soil, a certain coolness at dusk. It is the shelter inside a moss clump. It is the underside of a leaf that never fully dries. It is a pool that knows the same sky again and again, and as night gathers slowly around the TEPUI summit meadows, the colors withdraw into texture. Green becomes dark velvet, stone becomes matte and quiet. Water keeps the last available light, holding it in thin lines, beads, and shallow mirrors. Your eyes adjust, and the world becomes less about seeing far, more about sensing close. We move with care now, because the meadow is wet and uneven. Each step is chosen, soft and slow. The air smells of rain, peat, and the faint sharpness of living leaves. When the wind crosses open stone, it feels cooler, and when we pass low vegetation, the air becomes stiller, held near the ground. The summit at night is not empty. It is simply private. Many small creatures become active in damp darkness, moving along stems, under leaves, or across slick stone. You might hear faint rustling close to the ground, then nothing. You might see a tiny movement at the edge of a pool, and then only the reflection of cloud. The TEPUI summit meadows ask for a quieter kind of attention after dark. We do not need a bright beam or a search. We can let the hidden life remain hidden. The knowledge of it is enough. It softens the darkness, knowing that beneath the mist and among the wet plants, small lives continue their slow work. We pause again near a cluster of low shrubs. Their leaves are dark, firm, and wet along the margins. Droplets gather at the tips and fall at long intervals. Each falling drop sounds larger in the quiet than it looks. It touches a lower leaf, then another, then disappears into the moss below. This vertical passing of water, from cloud to leaf to ground, is one of the summit's most constant motions. The plants slow rainfall, divide it, hold it, and guide it into the thin soil. Without them, much more would run swiftly away over stone. With them, moisture lingers, creating small shelters for roots, microbes, seedlings, and the patient formation of peat. You can feel how living things and stone are not separate here. The meadow grows on the rock, but it also changes the rock's surface. Roots enter seams, organic acids stain water. Moss keeps wetness against stone long after rain has passed. Lichens cling, weather, and color the exposed slabs. Everything touches everything else. Softly, the night deepens, though the cloud keeps it from becoming sharp. There are no hard stars yet, no wide view of sky. Instead, there is a luminous darkness inside the mist, a muted glow that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. Your breathing has slowed with the landscape, your thoughts move less like words and more like water. We continue along the faint channel until it widens into a shallow pool, nearly black in the dimness. Its edge is lined with moss and small rushes. The surface reflects a blurred grey patch of sky, and when the wind touches it, the reflection loosens into rings. They spread slowly, reach the moss, and vanish. Pools like this can be temporary or long-lasting, depending on rainfall, drainage, and the shape of the stone beneath them. On a TEPUI summit, a slight depression may become a small wetland, especially where organic matter accumulates. The water may be low in nutrients, but it still supports tiny communities. Algae, microbes, insect larvae, and small invertebrates make quiet use of what gathers there. You may not see them clearly, but they are part of the meadow's hidden abundance. Life in lean water often works at a fine scale too small for easy notice. It forms films, threads, specks, and slow, invisible exchanges. The pool is not still because nothing is happening. It is still because much of what happens here is delicate. We stand beside it for a long moment, letting the coolness rise from the water. Your hands may feel damp even without touching anything. Your hair, your sleeves, the edge of your collar, all gather the summit's breath. The TEPUI summit meadows do not surround you with warmth. They surround you with clean, patient moisture. Then the mist loosens for a while, and a pale space opens above us. Through it, the first faint stars appear, softened by thin cloud. They do not glitter sharply, they hover. The meadow below them remains dark and wet, and the sandstone holds a little of the day's stored coolness. Everything feels suspended, as if the summit is floating between earth and sky. On clearer nights, these high places can feel astonishingly separate from the world below. The forested slopes and lowlands disappear into darkness, and the summit becomes its own small country of stone, peat, water, and wind. You can understand why tepuis are sometimes compared to islands. They carry their own weather, their own species, their own sense of distance. Yet nothing here feels lonely. The isolation is calm rather than empty. It gives each sound room, each plant significance, each pool a kind of quiet dignity. When you stand in the TEPUI summit meadows at night, you may feel that the world has become smaller, but also deeper. There is less to take in and more to receive. We walk toward a low rise where the ground dries slightly. Underfoot, the texture changes from sponge-soft peat to gritty sandstone. The shift is clear through your soles. Small pebbles press gently. Thin lichens make the rock faintly slick. A breeze arrives from the open side of the plateau, carrying a cleaner, colder scent. The rise reveals a little more of the summit. Not a wide panorama, only layered shadows of meadow and stone fading into mist. Low plants make rounded forms. Water gleams in narrow places. A few pale flowers hold their shape in the dark, visible because they catch what little light remains. They look less like decoration than like small acts of persistence. This persistence is one of the summit meadow's quiet teachings. Conditions can be severe in subtle ways, with poor soil, heavy rain, frequent cloud, and exposure to wind. Yet life has not turned away. It has become smaller, slower, and more exact. It has learned to inhabit limits without complaint. You feel that in your own body as we rest on the rise. The cool air encourages stillness. The dampness makes every movement noticeable. Your breath leaves slowly, and the meadow seems to answer with its own silence. You are not conquering this height. You are simply allowed to be still within it. As the night settles further, we turn our attention to the plants that feed in unusual ways. In the TEPUI summit meadows, carnivorous plants are not curiosities added to the scene. They are part of the summit's quiet economy. Where soils are poor in nitrogen and phosphorus, some plants gather nutrients from insects, using forms that are elegant, specialized, and patient. A pitcher plant's cup may hold rainwater, digestive fluids, and the remains of tiny insects drawn by color, scent, or surface. A sundew may carry sticky droplets that shine like dew, but serve another purpose. These adaptations can sound strange when named plainly, yet in the meadow they appear gentle. They are just leaves shaped by need, living slowly in a place where the ground gives little. You can picture a small insect moving over a wet leaf in the dim air. There is no drama in it. There is only contact, chemistry, and time. The plant does not chase. It waits. The meadow does not judge. It recycles. Nutrients return into green tissue, into flowers, into seeds, and eventually into peat, water, and stone-stained soil. We kneel beside one of these plants, careful not to touch. Its surface holds tiny beads that catch the faintest light. They look like stars gathered low to the ground. Around it, moss forms a bright, dark cushion, and small grasses lean outward, as if making space. The whole arrangement feels composed, but it came from weather, evolution, and chance repeated across ages. The TEPUI summit meadows are full of such arrangements. A plant that traps insects may grow beside one that simply endures poor soil with tough leaves. A moss may cradle both. A pool may reflect them. A stone may hold their roots above water just enough. Each relationship is practical, but from where we stand, it also looks tender. We rise slowly, and the night air moves through the grasses with a low whisper. Your body may feel heavier now in the pleasant way that comes from quiet walking and cool air. The meadow's rhythm has entered your muscles. Step, pause, breathe, listen. Step again. The summit does not ask for more. Far below, though we cannot see it, the rainforest continues in its own dark abundance. Warm air rises from it, moisture gathers, and clouds form along the heights. The TEPUI receives that moving atmosphere and turns it into rain, mist, seepage, and small shining channels. The summit meadow is connected to the lowland world, even while it feels apart from it. That connection is made mostly by water. Moisture lifts, condenses, falls, runs, and rises again. What seems isolated is still within a larger breathing system. You can feel that as the mist touches your face. The cloud around us may have been forest breath not long ago, lifted through warm air, cooled against the mountain, and returned here as silver dampness. And as we follow the meadow into deeper night, the boundary between place and weather grows even softer. The TEPUI summit meadows are not merely under the mist. They are partly made by it. Frequent cloud reduces sunlight, cools surfaces, wets leaves, and feeds mosses that might dry in a more open climate. The atmosphere is a gardener here, quiet and constant. We pass through another low hollow, where the air is especially still. The smell of peat is stronger. Water lies just below the surface, and every step releases a faint, dark shine between roots. The grasses are shorter here, and moss fills the spaces between them. A few small rosettes grow almost flat against the wet ground. In this hollow, sound feels close. A drop falling nearby seems to occur inside the same room as your breath. The wind passes overhead, but barely reaches the ground. You can imagine how small animals might shelter here, how seeds might lodge, how moisture might remain even after brighter weather returns. A little hollow can be a refuge. The meadow is full of refuges at this scale. A crack in the rock, a shaded side of a stone, a moss mound raised above standing water, a leaf base that holds rain. To larger eyes, these are details. To summit life, they are landscapes. We slow down enough to let that reversal become clear. You may feel your thoughts becoming smaller too, in a restful way. They no longer need to roam far. They can rest on one leaf, one droplet, one breath of wind. This is part of why such landscapes soothe us. They give attention a place to land, again and again, without demanding speed. We leave the hollow and cross a faintly higher strip where exposed sandstone forms natural steps. The surfaces are uneven but worn smooth in places. Pale lichens mark the drier edges, while moss gathers in the damp seams. The stone holds water in shallow pans, each one reflecting a piece of clouded night. They seem like small dark mirrors set into the mountain. These pans may deepen over time through weathering, pooling, and the slow action of water on mineral grains. Organic acids from plants can help alter the rock, and sediments may collect in the hollows. What begins as a slight irregularity becomes a basin, then a tiny wet habitat. The summit teaches formation at the scale of a hand. You lean over one of the pans and see a thin film on the water. It shifts with the breeze. Maybe it is pollen, maybe it is organic matter from nearby plants, maybe it is a living surface of microorganisms too small to distinguish. The exact answer matters less tonight than the sense that even a small pool can hold its own quiet complexity. The TEPUI summit meadows become more mysterious in this half-light, but not more threatening. Mystery here is soft. It comes from not seeing everything, from understanding that the meadow has depths of scale rather than depths of shadow. Beneath a leaf, inside a pool, within a mat of moss, whole processes continue without asking to be witnessed. We walk for a long time in that awareness. The path, if it can be called a path, is only a careful choosing among wet stones and plants. We avoid the softest places and step where rock is exposed. The night air remains cool enough to keep us slow. Nothing urges us forward. Eventually, the mist opens again, and we sense the summit edge somewhere beyond the meadow, though it remains mostly hidden. The air feels more spacious there. Wind moves with fewer interruptions, and the smell changes, becoming cleaner, more mineral, less peaty. We do not need to go close to the edge. It is enough to know that the plateau ends, and beyond it, the cloud falls away. The cliffs of Tepuis are part of what makes their summits so distinct. Steep walls isolate the meadows from surrounding ecosystems, limiting the movement of many species and shaping evolution in place. But from where we stand, that science becomes a feeling. The meadow has borders. It has kept its own long company. It has become itself. You can imagine rainwater leaving this summit near the edge, gathering into streams that pass over stone and descend through mist. Some will become waterfalls, broken into spray by the long drop. Some will feed rivers far below, carrying traces of this high, lean world into warmer valleys. Even the most secluded meadow gives something away. Here, above the clouds, that giving begins quietly. A seep becomes a trickle becomes a stream vanishes over stone into white air. The summit does not cling to all its water. It receives and releases, like breathing through the seasons. We turn back inward from the hidden edge toward the softer heart of the meadow. The wind eases as we move away. Low shrubs return around us, then grasses, then wet moss underfoot. The Tepuai summit meadows feel sheltered again, although nothing stands very tall. Shelter here is made from nearness, from cloud, from the way small plants soften the surface of ancient rock. You may notice that the darkness has become comfortable. At first, it hid details. Now it lets different details appear. The shine of water is clearer. The outline of a plant against stone is more noticeable. The touch of damp air feels more complete. Your senses have adjusted to a quieter register. This adjustment is part of descending into rest, even though we are high on a mountain. We are descending not by depth, but by pace. The mind comes down from brightness, from hurry, from distant concerns. It enters the meadow's slow scale, where a droplet falling from a leaf can be enough movement for a whole minute. We walk beside a narrow band of moss that follows a seep across the stone. It glows dark green in the faint light, richer than the grasses around it. If you touch it lightly, it would feel cool, springy, and soaked. We leave it undisturbed. Mosses here do their quiet work best when left whole, holding water, sheltering tiny organisms, and beginning the slow making of soil. Soil on these summits is often thin, patchy, and hard-won. It gathers where plants have already made conditions more forgiving. A lichen changes a surface. Moss catches dust and organic fragments. Roots bind the accumulating layer. Dead leaves settle and decay slowly. In time, a pocket of soil forms, and another plant finds a place to begin. The process has a circular softness. Life needs soil, but life also helps make soil. The Tepui summit meadows are built from this patient exchange, where beginnings rest upon earlier beginnings. Nothing stands alone. Even a single grass blade is supported by rain, stone, air, fungi, microbes, and the remains of plants that came before it. You breathe in, and the scent of wet moss seems deeper now. It carries the coolness of the night and the mineral trace of sandstone beneath. Around us, the meadow remains almost motionless. Yet within that stillness, water moves through roots, cells exchange sugars, fungi thread through damp matter, and unseen lives continue in gentle complexity. We come to another patch of flowering plants, their shapes barely visible in the low light. Some blossoms close at night, protecting their inner parts from moisture and cool air. Others remain open, pale, and receptive, waiting for small night visitors or simply resting until morning. The summit's floral life follows rhythms of light, temperature, and weather as carefully as any tide. You might imagine dawn already held somewhere inside these closed petals. Not a dramatic dawn, but a gradual brightening, a slow lifting of mist, the return of insect movement when warmth allows. The meadow carries future light in its folded leaves. For now, it rests. We rest with it. The TEPUI summit meadows do not measure time in the way we often do. Their time is seasonal rain, cloud cover, seed set, peat growth, stone weathering, and the slow separation of one summit lineage from another. Human time passes lightly over such places. The mountain's time remains broad and quiet underneath. As we walk, you may feel the comfort of belonging to a shorter moment. You do not have to hold geological time in your mind. You only need to feel one cool breath, one step on damp ground, one soft sound of water. The vastness is there, but it does not press. It simply supports the smallness of now. The mist lowers once more, and our world narrows to a circle of wet plants and stone. This time it feels familiar. The cloud is not a curtain anymore. It is part of the room. It softens your thoughts, gathers sounds close, and leaves the meadow shining in small places. You can almost feel the droplets settling on your eyelashes. We follow the faint thread of a watercourse upstream now, toward where it disappears into grasses. The source is not a spring in the usual sense. It is more like a gathering of seepage, rain, and saturated ground. Water emerges from the meadow itself, as though the summit has become full and is letting a little of its fullness move onward. This is common in wet high landscapes, where water does not always begin at one clear point. It begins everywhere. It gathers from cloud, leaf drip, peat, and stone hollows. It joins itself in low places. It finds a slope and starts to travel. The Tepui summit meadows are full of these quiet beginnings. At the upstream end, the channel becomes only a gleam between roots. Then it becomes scattered droplets. Then it becomes dampness. You kneel near the place where flowing water fades into wet ground, and the distinction between stream and meadow disappears. Everything is connected by moisture, but not always by visible movement. We stay there for a while, listening to the nearly silent source. There is no single sound to follow, only a close, wet hush. A drop falls. Another answers from a different leaf. A tiny movement shifts in the grass. The night keeps its slow balance. Your breathing settles into it. The summit's plants around this seep are slightly different from those on the drier rise. Their leaves look softer, their moss thicker, their roots more closely woven. This is how water writes patterns into the meadow. Not in bold lines alone, but in plant communities, textures, heights, colors, and the subtle firmness of ground beneath your feet. Ecologists might describe these as microhabitats, and the word is useful. But tonight, you can feel the meaning without holding the term. A microhabitat is a small place with its own conditions, its own invitations, its own limits. It is the shaded wet edge where one plant thrives while another waits a few steps away for airier ground. The Tepui summit meadows are a gathered collection of such places. They are not uniform fields, they are fine-grained worlds of difference. The longer we walk, the more that difference appears. What first seemed like quiet grassland becomes a living map of water, stone, wind, acidity, nutrient scarcity, shelter, and light. And now, as night deepens into its calm middle hours, the meadow seems to speak mostly through touch. Cool air on your cheeks, damp fabric at your wrists, soft ground giving slightly beneath your feet, stone steadying you when peat becomes too wet, the occasional brush of a leaf against your hand. These sensations keep you anchored. There is a special peace in being anchored by simple things. You do not need to think far ahead. The summit gives you one step, then another. The darkness gives you only what is near. Water gives a quiet rhythm. The meadow gives enough texture for your mind to rest without becoming lost. We move through a section of low shrubs, their branches twisted by exposure and slow growth. Their leaves are clustered close, shaped to resist wind and conserve what the plant has gathered. In the dim light, the shrubs look like dark cushions against the paler stone. Droplets hang beneath them, protected from the moving air. Woody plants on TEPUI summits often grow slowly, constrained by nutrient-poor substrates and frequent cloud. Their forms can be compact, leathery, or sculpted by weather. Yet they soften the landscape in important ways. They trap organic matter. They shade the ground. They shelter seedlings and small animals. They make pockets where the meadow can deepen. You pass your hand near one, not touching, and feel the air become still beside it. Even a low shrub changes the summit's breath. It interrupts wind, holds moisture, and creates a little margin of calm. For a small insect, that margin may matter. For a seedling, it may be the difference between drying and beginning. The meadow's tenderness lies in these small provisions. Nothing here appears lavish, yet many things make room for other things. A plant shelters moss. Moss holds water. Water feeds roots. Roots hold soil. Soil receives seeds. A quiet chain forms and the summit becomes livable through countless modest acts. We emerge from the shrubs onto another open patch, and the sky above has cleared a little more. Stars show through thin cloud, blurred but present. Their light is old, though not as old as the stone beneath us. Still, the thought of old light and old rock together makes the meadow feel almost timeless. You stand between distances, held by damp ground. The air is colder now, but not sharply cold. It settles around you like a cool sheet. The wind moves softly over the open stone, and the grasses answer in a low, even whisper. No single sound rises above the rest. The summit seems to have found its night voice, steady and subdued. If you look back, the way we came has already faded into mist and darkness. That is all right. We do not need to return in thought. The script of the meadow continues forward, one soft detail at a time. The TEPUI summit meadows are not a place to hurry across. They are a place to let each small presence arrive. We cross a narrow band of bare sandstone where shallow cracks make a faint pattern. Some cracks hold black organic matter, others hold only water. A few contain tiny seedlings, each one impossibly small against the age of the stone. You notice them and feel the quiet courage of beginnings, though courage may be too loud a word for something so calm. Perhaps it is simply readiness. Seeds wait until water, light, and a suitable crevice coincide. Many may never grow, but some do. On an exposed summit, establishment can be difficult, yet over time enough lives take hold to maintain the meadow. The mountain does not need every seed to succeed. It only needs continuity. Continuity is everywhere here. Not sameness, but a steady passing on. Water passes through, nutrients pass from insect to plant, from plant to peat, from peat to pool. Genetic lineages pass through flowering, seed, and slow adaptation. Stone passes into sand and dissolved minerals. Cloud passes into rain. We pass through quietly too. The thought is restful because it removes the need to be separate. You are part of the evening's movement, just for now. Your breath warms the cold air slightly. Your steps press water from peat and then release it. Your attention touches the meadow and lets it remain. Nothing more is required. As we continue, the ground rises almost imperceptibly. The meadow thins again, and a field of low stone hummocks appears, each one softened by lichen and moss. Between them, water gathers in dark seams. The shapes are rounded, worn by rain and time, giving the place a sculpted but gentle feeling. Weathering on sandstone can create strange and beautiful forms, especially where water follows joints and weaknesses in the rock. On TEPUI summits, this can produce pavements, cracks, basins, towers, and small labyrinths of stone. Yet in the meadows, those forms are often softened by vegetation. The geology remains visible, but it is clothed in damp green life. You step onto one of the stone hummocks and feel its firmness after the soft ground. The change brings a subtle ease to your balance. From here, you can see several shallow pools scattered through the meadow, each one holding a different piece of the dim sky. They do not shine brightly, they breathe light. We pause among the hummocks while the wind passes. It moves through the grasses below us, then around the stone, then away into mist. The sound is continuous but low. It seems to come from the whole summit rather than any one direction. You listen until it becomes almost indistinguishable from silence. The TEPUI summit meadows have many kinds of silence. There is the silence after a bird call fades, the silence inside mist, the silence of stone changing too slowly to hear, the silence of plants doing chemical work in darkness, the silence of small animals hidden beneath leaves. None of these silences is empty. Each one is full of gentle activity at another scale. You may feel sleepy now, and that belongs here. The meadow encourages a drowsy attention, the kind that receives rather than gathers. You do not need to remember every plant or process. You can let them drift through you like mist. A pitcher plant, a dark pool, a mossy seep, a sandstone hollow. Each image comes and goes softly. We keep moving, though barely. The next stretch is level, damp, and open. Your steps make a muted sound in the peat. The grass parts and closes behind you. A few droplets brush your ankles. Somewhere to the side, water trickles beneath vegetation. Unseen but near, the summit feels deeply enclosed by cloud. This enclosed feeling can make the meadow seem like an interior landscape, though it lies under open sky. The walls are not solid. They are made of vapor, dimness, and limited sight. Within them, your senses settle into a smaller circle. The smell of wet earth becomes clearer. The temperature of the air becomes more noticeable. The rhythm of breath becomes part of the place. You might imagine the daylight world below continuing without us, rivers winding through forest, leaves dripping after rain, insects calling in warmer air. But here, on the TEPUI summit meadows, those sounds do not reach. The plateau holds a different register, higher, cooler, slower, and more spare. It lets the mind loosen its grip on the day. And as we move farther into the night, the meadow begins to feel less like a place we are crossing and more like a place we are resting inside. The distinction matters. Crossing looks for an end. Resting does not. Resting allows the wet stone, the small flowers, the dim pools, and the low wind to be enough. We stop beside a flat slab where water has spread into a thin sheet. It is so shallow that the stone's reddish surface shows through. The water trembles whenever the breeze moves, turning the slab into a quiet mirror that cannot hold a reflection for long. You watch it shimmer, settle, shimmer again. Thin sheets of water like this can warm and cool quickly, respond to wind, and evaporate when clear weather returns. They may seem temporary, but temporary water still matters. It wets lichens, carries particles, connects small hollows, and gives brief access to moisture for organisms waiting in dry films or resistant forms. On a summit, even passing wetness has work to do. The stone around the sheet is patterned with darker streaks, where water has flowed repeatedly. These streaks follow slight inclines too subtle to notice at first. The landscape reads them perfectly. Water knows the tilt, moss knows the water, seeds know the moss. In time, the surface becomes a record of these quiet recognitions. You breathe slowly and feel your shoulders lower. The air is cool enough to make blankets seem imaginable, even here in the open. The sleepiness of the script and the wet quiet of the meadow begin to overlap. You are walking, but you are also sinking inward into a calm place below ordinary thought. The TEPUI summit meadows are high above the sea, but they can feel like another kind of depth. Not ocean depth, but time depth, weather depth, stillness depth. You descend into them by slowing down, by noticing smaller things, by letting the wide world recede behind mist. Each step takes you farther from noise, though the ground remains nearly level. We follow the edge of the water sheet until it narrows, then disappears into a crack. The crack runs across the stone toward a patch of moss. In that moss, droplets gather and hold. The water has not ended. It has only changed its form. It has entered green tissue, dark peat, and the hidden spaces between roots. This is how the summit keeps continuity through change. Flow becomes storage. Storage becomes seepage. Seepage becomes flow again. A cloud becomes rain. Rain becomes pool. Pool becomes vapor. Nothing stays fixed, yet the meadow persists. Its stability is made of movement slowed to a soothing pace. We leave the slab and return to softer ground. The grasses are wet enough now to leave fine lines of moisture where they touch your clothing. The sensation is cool and light. A small moth or night insect passes close to your shoulder, briefly visible as a pale flicker, then vanishes into mist. You let it go. Night insects in high, cool meadows may be fewer or more weather-dependent than those in warmer forests, but they still form part of the summit's quiet food web. Some pollinate, some feed birds, frogs, or spiders. Some live most of their lives unseen in soil, stems, or water. Their presence is often subtle, but subtle does not mean unimportant. A spiderweb appears between two low stems, made visible by droplets. It looks like a small net of silver beads, suspended inches above the ground. We step around it. The web trembles slightly in the moving air, then steadies. Even here, in cold dampness, the work of waiting continues. The meadow's many forms of waiting are gentle to contemplate. Seeds wait, carnivorous leaves wait, pools wait for rain, flowers wait for light, moss waits through brief dry spells, stone waits through ages. We wait too, but our waiting becomes easier here, because the whole summit seems to understand it. As we walk, the mist begins to glow faintly ahead, perhaps from moonlight filtered through cloud. It is not a beam or a clear source. It is a soft brightening in the vapor, enough to shape the grasses and stones in muted silver. The TEPUI summit meadows respond by becoming dreamlike. Each surface damp, each edge blurred, each small pool holding a piece of that pale light. Moonlight, when it reaches these summits, changes very little and yet changes everything. Colors withdraw further, but water becomes luminous. The white or pale petals of certain flowers become more visible. Wet stone shines along its grain. Shadows lose their depth. You see less detail but more atmosphere. We let the moonlit mist guide us across another open stretch. The ground is firm enough here, and the walking becomes almost rhythmical. Your breath, your steps, and the low wind move together. The meadow no longer feels like something outside you. It has become the pace at which your thoughts are allowed to move. A small pool beside the path holds the moon's blurred reflection. It looks like a pale stone resting underwater. Around it, moss forms a dark rim, and tiny stems lean inward. The pool may dry slightly in a clearer spell, then fill again with rain. Its life is cyclical, but not hurried. It belongs to return. Return is another deep pattern here. Clouds return to the summit, rain returns to the basins. The wind crosses the plateau again and again. Even erosion is a kind of return, because water finds old roots and renews them. The TEPUI summit meadows are shaped by recurrence, and recurrence can be soothing when it is slow. You may feel the recurrence in the language now, in the repeated softness of water, moss, stone, and cloud. This is not a place of sharp novelty. It is a place of variations. The same elements combine in slightly different ways, across hollows, rises, pools, channels, and shrubs. Your mind does not need to chase them. It can drift among them. We come to a wider meadow patch, where the grasses lie low and even. The surface looks smooth from a distance, but close up it is full of tiny height differences, small leaves, flowering stems, and water-darkened spaces. Your steps remain careful. The meadow is not a carpet. It is a living surface. In such high, wet ecosystems, trampling can matter because recovery may be slow. Growth rates are often limited by temperature, nutrients, and exposure. So we move lightly in imagination, placing each step on stone where we can, letting plants remain whole. The calmness of the walk includes care. To move gently is to understand the meadow's pace. The air smells fresher here, perhaps because the wind moves more freely. It carries faint notes of wet grass, open stone, and cloud. There is no smoke, no dust, no heavy sweetness. The scent is spare, washed, and almost transparent. You breathe it in and feel the simplicity of the summit enter your body. A low sound comes from the mist, maybe wind moving over an unseen edge, maybe water slipping through stone. It is too soft to identify clearly. We let it remain unnamed. Not every sound needs to become information. Some sounds are better as texture, part of the blanket of place that settles around a tired mind. The TEPUI summit meadows continue beyond what we can see, but not endlessly. They belong to the flat crowns of particular mountains, each bounded by cliffs and weather. That boundedness makes them precious. It also makes them feel complete in a way that wide landscapes sometimes do not. Within the mist, you sense a whole world, small enough to hold, old enough to humble you. We cross the smooth patch and reach another scatter of stones. These stones are darker, wet on one side, pale with lichen on the other. Their arrangement may seem random, but water has influenced each position by washing away smaller grains, exposing harder surfaces, and leaving fragments where slope and structure allow. The meadow's patterns are written in slow mechanics. You sit beside one stone, and the coolness of it reaches through the air before you touch it. A droplet falls from a leaf nearby. Another falls after a long pause. Your breath has become slow enough that the pauses feel natural. The night is not silent in a blank way. It is full of intervals. Intervals are restful. They give sound somewhere to go. They give thought somewhere to dissolve. On the TEPUI summit meadows, intervals exist between drops, between gusts, between bird calls, between clearer moments in the mist. The whole landscape seems composed of gentle spacing. Nothing crowds you. Nothing rushes your attention. We remain there for a time with the stone, the wet plants, and the low cloud. If the moon is above us, it is hidden again. The light dims. The meadow returns to grey and black, with only water keeping a soft sheen. You may feel as though the summit has closed its eyes. This deeper darkness is not an ending. It is simply another layer of the same place. Plants continue drawing moisture through tissues. Microbes continue their quiet transformations in peat. Small animals continue to shelter, feed, or wait. Water continues moving along routes too small to see. The meadow is awake in ways that do not disturb rest. We stand and follow a barely visible line of firmer ground. It leads through a patch where small shrubs form rounded shapes, each one separated by damp open spaces. The pattern resembles islands, and the comparison feels natural here. A TEPUI itself is like an island above forest, and within its summit, each dry mound, wet hollow, and moss cushion becomes another island, at a smaller scale. This nested island quality helps explain the richness and specialization of life here. Isolation can happen across great distances, but also across tiny differences in moisture or soil. A plant may be common in one patch and absent a few steps away. A small creature may spend its whole life in a narrow band of suitable habitat. The meadow is both open and finely divided. You look at the rounded shrubs and the dark spaces between them, and the pattern feels calm rather than complicated. It is enough to know that each patch has its own conditions. The meadow has arranged itself through long experiment. Weather has offered possibilities, life has answered slowly. What remains is a quiet, living pattern. The wind lowers again, and for a few minutes the air becomes very still. In that stillness, the mist seems to rest on the ground rather than move across it. Droplets cling without falling. The grasses stand without whispering. Even your own movement feels louder, so we slow further, matching the summit's pause. Still air changes how the meadow feels against your skin. The cool dampness becomes more even, less like touch and more like immersion. You are not wet from rain exactly, but surrounded by suspended water. It softens the edges of breath. It makes the night feel close and protective, though nothing encloses us but cloud. The TEPUI summit meadows often live inside this kind of atmospheric intimacy. Cloud cover can reduce evaporation and keep surfaces wet for long periods. It changes the daily rhythm of plants and animals, making moisture not only an event, but a condition. In this way, The summit is shaped by air that behaves almost like water, settling gently over everything. We pass a cluster of bromeliad-like rosettes, holding water in their centers. Their leaves form cups where rain can rest. Within such small reservoirs, tiny organisms may live, feed, and reproduce, turning a plant into a miniature wetland. You peer into one cup and see only darkness, a little reflected light, and perhaps the faintest movement. It is enough. These water-holding plants create habitats above the ground, sheltered from the larger flow of the meadow. A frog, insect larva, or microbe may find an entire world in the cup of leaves. The thought is soothing because it reminds you how many lives are carried in small containers. A pool can be no wider than your palm and still be a place. We leave the rosettes undisturbed and continue through the wet grass. The night has become thick and soft. Your body is tired now, but not strained. The walking has been slow enough that fatigue arrives as heaviness rather than ache. The meadow seems to invite that heaviness, the way damp moss receives water and holds it without complaint. Ahead, the ground slopes downward by only a little. It is barely a slope, more a suggestion. Yet water has recognized it, and the vegetation follows. The grasses grow brighter, the moss thicker, and another small channel begins. We follow it because the summit's quiet logic keeps leading us back to water. This channel is narrower than the last, almost hidden. Its sound is more felt than heard. Water moves beneath stems and over pebbles, making a soft friction in the darkness. Your feet remain beside it, not in it. The smell of peat rises again, and the air near the channel feels slightly colder. Small channels like this can expand during heavy rain, then shrink to hidden seepage during drier periods. They're changing size, shapes which plants can live near them. Some tolerate saturation, others need just enough drainage to keep their roots from standing too long in water. The meadow's apparent stillness contains these quiet negotiations. You can sense that negotiation is texture, wet moss under low plants. Firmer mats a step away, bare stone where water moves too often for roots to hold. Dark peat where water pauses. Each surface tells you something through your feet, your eyes, and the cool smell rising from the ground. The TEPUI summit meadows teach through such gradual noticing. At first, you see a high meadow in mist, then you see water, then stone. Then the ways water and stone make plant patterns, then the smaller patterns inside those plants, and the hidden lives inside those smaller patterns. The place opens inward. We follow the channel until it bends around a stone and disappears beneath vegetation. The darkness under the plants is dense, wet, and alive with unseen possibility. We do not disturb it. We sit nearby instead, on a firm rock, letting the sound of hidden water continue. It is steady enough to become almost like breathing. There is comfort in hidden water. You know it is moving even when it cannot be seen. It gives the mind a thread to rest on. In the deepening night of the TEPUI summit meadows, that thread is enough to hold the scene together. Cloud above, stone below, plants between, and water moving quietly through all of it. A faint chill passes through the air, and you draw inward slightly. The summit's coolness is gentle but persistent. It reminds the body to conserve, to slow, to settle. Around us, plants have been shaped by this same instruction for ages. They grow low, keep firm leaves, store what they can, and wait through weather. Waiting is not emptiness here. It is an active form of life. A closed flower waits for light. A seed waits for the right wetness. A frog waits in damp shelter. A carnivorous leaf waits for a small visitor. Stone waits for water to return to the same scene. The whole meadow is a calm practice of readiness. You may feel your own waiting soften into rest. Nothing has to happen quickly. The summit has already shown us enough, and still it continues, detail after detail, without performance. We breathe with it for another minute. The hidden water moves. The mist lowers. The grasses hold their beads of rain. Then we rise and move on, following no path now except the feeling of open ground ahead. The TEPUI summit meadows spread around us as a low, dark, damp expanse. Every few steps, a pool catches light. Every few breaths, the wind changes slightly. Every so often, the ground shifts from peat to stone and back again. The repetition becomes calming rather than monotonous because each return is slightly different. A pool with moss, a pool with bare rock, a pool too dark to reflect anything, a stone rimmed with lichen, a stone half buried in peat, a stone carrying a line of water through its shallow groove. The summit repeats, like water repeats, never quite the same. We arrive at a place where the meadow seems especially open, and for a moment, the mist thins enough to suggest distance. Low silhouettes stretch away from us. The ground rises and falls in muted bands. Beyond them, cloud glows faintly above an unseen drop. The view is quiet and incomplete, and that incompleteness feels restful. You do not need to see the whole summit to be held by it. A partial view allows imagination to soften the edges. The TEPUI summit meadows continue into mist, and the unseen parts feel as real as the visible ones. Somewhere beyond our small circle, more pools lie still, more plants hold water, and more stone receives the night. This is how a sleeping mind often likes a landscape. Not fully mapped, not explained all at once. Just present enough to enter, gentle enough to remain. The meadow offers itself in pieces, and each piece leads calmly to another. You can drift through it without arriving anywhere final. We turn slightly toward the dim glow and walk through grasses that reach higher now, brushing just below the knee. They are wet and cool. Their movement against you is slow because you are slow. Droplets slide from them onto your clothing, leaving small touches of cold that fade quickly into the general dampness of the night. Tall grasses in a wetter patch may indicate deeper peat or a different drainage pattern. They change the soundscape too. Wind moves through them with a fuller whisper than through shorter vegetation. Small creatures may shelter lower in their stems. Moisture remains longer beneath their cover. A change in height becomes a change in feeling. You hear that fuller whisper now, and it makes the meadow feel more enclosed. The grasses form a soft corridor, though no path is cut. We move through carefully, letting the stems bend and return. The smell here is greener, less mineral. It carries the faint living scent of wet leaves pressed close together. At the far side of the grasses, the ground opens into another stony patch. The contrast is gentle but clear. Your feet feel the firmness again. The air moves more freely. The sound of the grasses drops behind us. Ahead, flat sandstone holds several shallow basins, each one dark with water and edged by low vegetation. We pause at the largest basin. Its rim is smooth, as if touched by many seasons of rain. The water inside is still, nearly black, with a pale line of mist reflected across it. You look into it and see no bottom at first. Then your eyes adjust and find submerged leaves, a few grains of sand, the faint shape of stone beneath. Even shallow water can appear deep at night. Darkness gives it a quiet depth beyond measurement. The basin becomes a small night sky turned downward into rock. You do not need to lean too close. You simply stand beside it and let its stillness become part of yours. The TEPUI summit meadows contain many such small mirrors, and each one holds the atmosphere differently. Some reflect bright cloud, some hold brown water and no reflection. Some are broken by stems, some are filmed with pollen or algae. Together, they give the summit a scattered, liquid memory of the sky. We move past the basin and continue across the wet stone. The moonlit mist glows again, then dims. The weather is always changing slightly, but never abruptly. It shifts like breath under a blanket. The summit accepts each variation without losing its calm. Rain, clearing, mist, wind, and stillness all belong to the same slow night. You may notice how little the meadow needs from us. It does not ask to be admired loudly. It does not ask to be solved. It simply allows attention to settle on it. In return, it gives coolness, texture, wet silence, and the strange comfort of an ancient place going on without urgency. This comfort is not escape from the world. Exactly. It is a return to a wider pace. The mountain's pace, the cloud's pace, the pace of roots growing through poor soil and water, rounding stone by almost invisible degrees. When you imagine that pace, your own concerns can loosen, becoming less sharp in the damp air. We enter another area of low, flowering shrubs, where the blossoms are closed or half closed in night. Their shapes hang downward, shedding droplets from their tips. The leaves are thick and dark, and the branches seem twisted by many seasons of wind. In the mist, each shrub looks self-contained, a small, quiet shelter. Some plants on TEPUI summits are found nowhere else, or only on a few neighboring highlands. Their isolation has allowed them to follow local paths of evolution, shaped by the particular summit's climate and substrate. But tonight, we do not need to list their names. It is enough to feel their particularity. They belong here in a way that is almost intimate. You stand among them and sense the long conversation between life and place. The summit says rain, wind, poor soil, cloud, and old sandstone. The plants answer with low growth, tough leaves, water-holding forms, unusual feeding strategies, and patient reproduction. Over time, the answers become beautiful because they are so exact. A drop falls from one blossom and lands on a leaf below. The leaf tips, releases another drop, and stills. This tiny cascade repeats the larger movement of water down the TEPUI cliffs, but in miniature. The summit contains echoes of itself at every scale. A leaf can hold a waterfall's idea in a single falling bead. We walk between the shrubs until they thin and the meadow returns to grasses. The night feels deeper now, but also softer. You may find that you are no longer waiting for something distinct to happen. The repetition itself has become the journey. Mist, water, stone, grass, breath. Each returns, and each return carries you lower into rest. The TEPUI summit, meadows remain high above the forest, but in your body, the descent continues. Shoulders lower, jaw softens, hands loosen. Thoughts move slowly, then more slowly. The ancient summit does not need to be deep below sea level to feel profound. It is profound because it has kept stillness for so long. We come to a small rise where the peat is firmer, and the view, though clouded, opens slightly in all directions. This feels like a place to pause. Around us, the meadow lies in dark bands, its water catching faint light in scattered points. Above us, the cloud moves, thin and pale, revealing and hiding small openings of sky. The air here is balanced between wind and calm. You can hear the grasses, but softly. You can smell wet stone, but also peat. You can feel exposure, but also the nearness of low plants. The summit holds opposites without tension, open and enclosed, ancient and delicate, sparse and full, high and inward. We sit on the firm ground and let the scene settle. The moisture in the air rests on your skin. The stone nearby gives back no warmth. The plants around us seem almost asleep, though their cells continue their quiet night work. Water lies in the hollows. The mountain stands beneath everything, steady in darkness. If thoughts arise, the meadow gives them somewhere soft to go. They can move into the mist and lose their edges. They can settle into peat with old leaves. They can drift across shallow water and become reflection. Nothing here pushes them back. The summit receives gently, as it receives rain. After a time, we stand again, not because we need to reach a destination, but because the meadow continues. The next steps lead down the far side of the rise into another damp hollow. The transition is subtle, and yet your body feels it. The air cools, the ground softens, the smell deepens, moss thickens under the grasses. This hollow is wider than the others, and the wetness is more continuous. It may collect runoff from nearby stone surfaces, holding water through much of the year. In a place like this, peat can build more deeply, and plants adapted to saturated soils can form dense mats. The surface looks stable, but water lives just below it. We move along the firmer margin, where stone fragments make a narrow, natural line. The hollow itself remains undisturbed beside us. Its grasses are dark and glossy. Small rosettes dot the surface. Here and there a pitcher plant rises from the wet mat, its cup open to rain and night. The scene feels still enough to be held in one breath. Nutrient-poor wetlands often produce remarkable plant strategies. On TEPUI summits, the combination of wetness, acidity, and poor mineral supply can favor species that conserve, capture, or cooperate in specialized ways. Mycorrhizal fungi may help roots gather scarce nutrients. Carnivory may supplement what soil cannot provide. Tough leaves may last longer, making each investment count. These scientific details do not make the meadow less dreamlike. They deepen the dream. They show that the beauty we see is not decoration, but function made visible. A leaf shape, a cup, a hair, a waxy surface, a low cushion, each one is a quiet answer to the summit's conditions. You breathe in and feel the cool air fill you slowly. Around us, the hollow holds its darkness. A tiny sound comes from within it, perhaps a small animal moving through wet stems. Then stillness returns. The meadow keeps most of its life private, and that privacy feels like part of its peace. We follow the hollow's edge until it narrows between two stretches of exposed sandstone. The water must pass through here after rain, guided by the shape of the rock. The plants change again, becoming shorter, tighter, more closely fitted to cracks. You can see how drainage organizes the scene, drawing boundaries without walls. At the narrow point, the wet ground gives way to a small runnel over stone. The water moves clearly now, just a thin ribbon under the dim sky. It glides across the sandstone, disappears beneath the moss lip, then reappears a few feet away. Its sound is barely more than a whisper, but it is steady. We kneel near the runnel and watch it work. Fine grains shift along the bottom. A tiny leaf fragment turns, catches, and rests against a pebble. The water curves around it and continues. Such small events repeat through seasons, gradually sorting particles, feeding pools, carrying organic matter and linking one part of the meadow to another. The TEPUI summit meadows are connected by these tiny flows. Even where plants seem separate and pools seem isolated, water often ties them together during rains. It carries chemistry, seeds, fragments, and life too small to see. The connections may appear and disappear, but the meadow remembers them in its patterns. As we rise from the runnel, the mist thickens once again. The world reduces itself to the sound of water and the feel of wet air. This repeated closing and opening of sight has a soothing effect. It keeps the mind from fixing too hard on distance. It draws attention back, kindly, to the present ground. You can let your eyes soften now. There is no need to inspect every detail. The meadow will continue whether we name it or not. Let the low plants blur slightly. Let the stones become dark shapes. Let the pools hold their light without explanation. The TEPUI summit meadows are still here, patient under cloud. We walk on through the quiet, and the night seems to grow deeper without becoming heavier. The air remains clean, the ground remains damp. The ancient rock remains close beneath the living surface. Every element has become familiar now, like a slow phrase repeated in a soft voice. Stone, water, moss, grass, cloud, and breath. A few more stars appear overhead, then fade behind passing vapor. Their brief appearance reminds you that above the summit's mist, the sky is wide and clear. But we are not above the mist tonight. We are inside it. With the meadow, the cloud's closeness is part of the comfort, keeping the vastness gentle. The TEPUI summit meadows hold that balance beautifully. They belong to immense geological time, yet ask you to notice the nearest droplet. They stand above huge forests, yet guide your attention to a tiny leaf. They are isolated by cliffs, yet connected by water and weather. They feel remote, yet strangely intimate when you walk through them slowly. We reach a place where the ground is almost level, soft, and dark, with short vegetation spreading in all directions. It feels like the quiet center of this part of the meadow. No channel is visible, no stone rise interrupts it. Moisture is held evenly, and the plants make a low, continuous texture beneath the mist. Here, the summit seems to breathe in its sleep. The wind comes lightly, moves across the surface, and fades. Droplets tremble but do not fall. The smell of peat is mild and steady. Your own breathing becomes part of the same slow exchange, in and out, like cloud arriving and thinning. We stand still, and the stillness deepens. The longer you remain, the more you sense subtle movement everywhere. A leaf shifts, a drop slides, a blade of grass lifts after being touched by wind. A faint ripple crosses a hidden patch of water. The meadow is never frozen, it is only quiet. This kind of quiet can be easy to miss in daylight or hurry. It reveals itself when we stop asking the landscape to perform. The Tepui summit meadows do not perform. They persist. They gather mist, grow slowly, weather stone, shelter small lives, and let water begin its long paths downward. You may feel now that the summit is less a destination than a state of attention. To be here is to become slower, cooler, more receptive. The old sandstone under the meadow gives a sense of depth beneath every small thing. The mist gives privacy. The water gives rhythm. The plants give texture and patience. We begin walking again, though the movement feels almost like drifting. The ground changes underfoot by small degrees, and the mist keeps folding the world into manageable pieces. Ahead, a low, dark shape appears, resolves into a stone, and passes beside us. Another shape becomes a shrub. Another becomes a pool rim, shining faintly. Each revealed thing arrives gently. Nothing startles. The summit's night is full of gradual appearances. This matters for rest, because the mind can trust gradualness. It does not need to brace. It can soften and keep softening, while the meadow continues to appear one quiet detail at a time. We come beside another shallow pool, longer and narrower than the others. It lies in a natural groove in the sandstone, partly edged by moss. The water is very still. A few floating fragments rest on the surface. Their shadows below them look larger than they are, and the whole pool feels like a small dark passage. Perhaps during heavy rain this groove carries flowing water, and during calmer weather it becomes a resting pool. Many summit features shift roles like that. A channel becomes a basin, a seep becomes a stream, a dry patch becomes wet under cloud. A landscape is stable in form, but flexible in function. The pool's edge is lined with tiny plants, each one close to the water but not submerged. Their roots likely occupy the damp seam where rock, peat, and moisture meet. That seam is narrow, yet enough. Again, the meadow shows how life uses margins. It does not need wide opportunity when a precise one will do. You bend nearer, and the smell of wet stone rises distinctly. It is clean, faintly metallic, and cool. The pool itself smells almost like nothing, which is another kind of purity. In the stillness, your breath makes the nearest surface tremble, and the trembling travels outward until the whole narrow pool has answered you. We leave it in peace and move on. The path of our attention has become as winding as the summit's water. We do not proceed in straight lines. We follow impressions, textures, slight slopes, and sounds. This is how the TEPUI summit meadows are best entered, not as a route to complete, but as a quiet field of noticing. The night is now well settled. If morning exists, it is far away, held somewhere beyond the dark clouds and the slow turning of earth. Here there is only the long middle of night on wet high ground. The summit feels timeless, and your body, hearing that timelessness, lets go a little more. We pass a place where the moss grows thick around the base of a stone. It looks like a small green shore around an island. The stone rises only a little, but its presence changes everything around it. Water runs off its sides, shade falls differently, organic matter gathers at its base, and tiny roots enter the protected seam. This is another small lesson in landscape formation. Large forms are built from small influences repeated everywhere. A stone changes water, water changes moss, moss changes plants. Plants change the next pattern of water. On a TEPUI summit, where growth is slow and surfaces are exposed, those small influences remain visible. You can rest your attention on that mossy shore for a while. Its texture is dense and fine. Droplets sit among the tiny leaves, not falling, just shining faintly. If daylight came, the moss would seem brighter. At night, it is a dark softness against darker stone, sensed almost as much as seen. The TEPUI summit meadows continue to offer these small shorelines, islands, basins, and channels, all in miniature. The language of water landscapes repeats itself at the scale of the summit. There are not broad beaches or deep lakes here, but there are edges, shallows, crossings, and refuges. The mountain carries a quiet map of wetness. We walk through that map slowly, and the air begins to move again. A light wind comes from the direction of the hidden cliffs, carrying a cooler thread through the mist. It brushes across the open patches first, then slips into the grasses, then fades among shrubs. You feel it on your face, and then it is gone. Wind on the summit can be shaping force, especially where vegetation is low and exposure is constant. It dries some surfaces, bends growth, disperses seeds, and moves cloud across the plateau. Tonight, it is gentle. It does not push. It merely reminds us that this high meadow is open to the sky, even when the sky is made of mist. Your eyelids may feel heavy now. Let them. The script can continue whether your attention remains sharp or becomes soft. The meadow does not mind being half heard. Many of its own processes are half hidden. If you drift, you will drift among rain-dark stone, quiet pools, and low plants breathing in the cloud. We come to another slight rise where the ground firms and the grasses shorten. From here, the surrounding mist glows with a faint, even grey. There is no clear moon, but the night is not entirely black. The summit's wet surfaces hold enough light to outline the landscape. Every pool, every channel, every leaf tip keeps a little silver. Silver is the color of this hour. Not bright silver, but softened silver, spread thinly over water and mist. The stone is almost black beneath it. The moss is deep green only in memory. The flowers are pale shapes. The Tepui summit meadows have become a world of muted tones, designed for rest. We pause on the rise and listen. Far away, perhaps beyond the edge, water moves with a deeper sound, still soft from distance. It may be a stream descending through rock, or wind in a hollow, or both together. The sound is continuous enough to become background. It settles behind the nearer ticks and whispers of the meadow. There is something deeply calming about layered sound when none of it demands attention. Near drops, low grass, hidden water, distant movement, breath. Each layer remains gentle, and together they create a soundscape that feels wider than sight. You can close your eyes and still know you are in the Tepui summit meadows. With eyes closed, the cool dampness becomes clearer. The ground's firmness beneath you becomes clearer. The slight smell of peat and stone becomes clearer. You can feel the summit through senses that do not need light. The old mountain holds you from below, and the cloud holds the night around you. When we open our eyes again, the mist has shifted. A few yards ahead, a patch of flowers is visible, low and scattered. Their pale forms seem to hover just above the dark ground. We walk toward them slowly, keeping to the stone where possible. The flowers remain still, each one carrying a tiny brightness in the grey. Flowering in such places may be timed to seasons, pollinators, and windows of suitable weather. A blossom may last only as long as it needs to. It may open between rains, close in cold, or rely on insects adapted to these high conditions. Tonight, we see them at rest, their work paused or hidden in the dark. You can think of each flower as a small invitation made by the summit to the living world. Color, scent, shape, and nectar are all forms of communication, quiet but precise. In daylight, a pollinator may read them. At night, they become part of the meadow's dream, pale marks in the wet grass. We remain among them without touching. The air around the flowers smells only faintly floral, almost swallowed by the stronger sense of rain and moss. That faintness suits the place. Nothing is lavish here. Everything is measured. Even beauty arrives in small portions, and because of that, it feels more intimate. The Tepui summit meadows continue beyond the flowers into darker ground. We follow, letting the flower patch fade behind us. A sense of depth returns, though not visual depth. It is the depth of repetition, ancientness, and accumulated quiet. The more we move, the more the summit seems to hold layers of time beneath every wet step. Under the grasses lie roots and peat. Under the peat lies weathered sandstone. Under the sandstone lie older stories of deposition, pressure, uplift, and erosion. Above it all moves cloud, arriving from the living lowlands and leaving as rain. You stand at the meeting of these layers, and the meeting is calm. We do not need to descend through them physically. Awareness is enough. The meadow lets the mind sink downward through relation, from droplet to root, from root to peat, from peat to stone, from stone to the vast age beneath. Then it lifts you gently back to the surface, where a leaf trembles and a drop falls. That is where rest lives tonight. in the movement between vast and small. The Tepui summit meadows hold both without strain. They are ancient, but made of tiny, wet details. They are remote, but near to your skin. They are scientifically rich, but emotionally simple. They say, breathe slowly, look softly, stay a little longer. We continue into another patch of cloud, and visibility shrinks until only a few steps are clear. This no longer feels limiting. It feels merciful. The world has become exactly as large as it needs to be. Your next step, the dark, wet grass beside it, the stone just ahead, the faint sound of water somewhere to your left. The mist touches your face like cool breath. Droplets gather and roll slowly along your skin. The air smells of nothing sharp, nothing hurried. You can imagine lying down somewhere dry and warm later, while this summit continues in its cool night, still receiving cloud, still holding pools, still letting water move through moss. But for now, we remain here. We keep walking gently through the Tepui summit meadows, with the old stone beneath us and the wet plants close around us. The night has become a long, slow sentence, and we are inside it, moving from one soft clause to the next without needing a final point. Ahead, the ground lowers again into a darker hollow, and the scent of peat rises to meet us before we reach it. The air there looks thicker, as if the mist has pooled among the grasses. A hidden streamlet makes a sound so soft it could be mistaken for thought. We let that sound guide us downward into the hollow, one careful step at a time. The hollow receives us with a darker kind of softness, the kind made by peat, pooled air, and grasses heavy with water. Each step finds the firmest places along the edge, where roots and stone make a quiet path through the damp. The hidden streamlet stays near us, not always visible, but present as a low thread of movement beneath the meadow's breath. Here the Tepui summit meadows feel especially close to sleep. The ground holds water as though holding a dream it does not want to release too quickly. Mist settles in the low place and blurs the stems into one another, so the plants seem less like separate forms and more like a single wet surface. You can smell old leaves, cold moss, and the faint mineral note of sandstone below. We follow the hollow slowly, letting its narrow shape guide us. The grasses are shorter near the wettest middle, where standing water keeps roots in a different world. Along the margins, small shrubs appear again, their leaves glossy in the dimness. Water has arranged this whole shallow basin, deciding where softness gathers and where firmer edges remain. In a high Tepui meadow, such hollows can become quiet records of climate and time. Peat may build in thin layers, preserving traces of plants that grew under past conditions. Pollen can settle. Charcoal from distant old fires may be caught, if any ever reached these heights. The hollow does not speak loudly, but it can remember. You do not need to read that memory tonight. It is enough to walk beside it. The feeling of memory is already in the air, in the saturated ground, in the way each footstep seems to press gently on years rather than soil alone. The meadow feels old here, not in a ruined way, but in the way of something continuously cared for by rain. The streamlet appears at last between two mats of moss. It is no wider than your hand, and its surface is broken by tiny stems. The water is dark, clear at the edges, and brown where it deepens, stained by peat and plant matter. It slips over a shallow lip of stone and settles into another narrow pool below. We pause beside that pool and let our eyes adjust. There is no hurry to understand it. A few pale fragments rest beneath the surface. A small ripple crosses from one side to the other, then disappears. You may notice the slight cold rising from the water, a coolness that feels steadier than the moving air around it. Water in these summit meadows is often young in its falling, but old in its pathway. It may have condensed from mist only hours ago, yet the hollow it enters has been shaped by countless earlier rains. In that way, each drop is brief and ancient at once. The moment and the mountain share the same little channel. We move on, and the hollow widens. The mist opens just enough to show low vegetation spread across the damp floor. A few pitcher plants stand among the grasses, their cups dark in the night. Their forms are still and balanced, holding water, waiting, feeding through patience rather than movement. They seem almost like small vessels set out for the clouds, The TEPUI summit meadows are known for such quiet inventions of plant life. Where nutrients are scarce, leaves become cups, traps, slick surfaces, or long-lasting structures that conserve what the plant has gathered. These are not extravagant gestures. They are precise solutions, shaped through time by the summit's lean soils and endless wetness. You look at one picture and notice how its rim catches the faint light. A droplet clings there, trembling slightly. Inside the cup, water rests in darkness, part rain, part chemistry, part hidden world. The plant is rooted in poor ground, yet it has made its own small source of nourishment from the passing life of the air. Around it, moss forms a thick shining mat. The moss does not flower brightly. It does not rise tall. It performs a quieter service, holding moisture, sheltering tiny organisms, slowing runoff and helping the meadow keep what the sky gives. When your gaze softens, moss becomes almost like the meadow's breath made visible. The hidden streamlet bends away from us and we let it go. We climb a slight rise, no more than a gradual lifting of the ground, but enough to change the air. The scent of peat lessens. Stone comes closer to the surface, your steps become firmer, and the grasses grow shorter, as though the summit is turning a different face toward the night. This raised strip may drain more quickly after rain, leaving plants to manage both wetness and occasional dryness. On TEPUI summits, such small differences shape entire communities. A few inches of height can decide whether water lingers or slips away. A thin skin of soil can determine whether a seedling settles or waits for another place. The meadow reveals these decisions without words. You feel them through the soles of your feet. Softness gives way to grit. Damp peat gives way to cool stone. Tall, wet grasses give way to low rosettes and tough leaves. Your body reads the land before your mind has finished naming it. We reach the top of the rise and pause. The mist thins, and for several breaths we sense the larger plateau around us. Dark meadows stretch outward in rounded patches. Low rock forms gleam with moisture. A few distant pools hold the night sky as dim broken ovals. The TEPUI summit meadows look endless from here, though we know each summit has its boundary. That feeling of endlessness within a bounded place is one of their quiet powers. The cliffs make the world finite, but the mist makes it immeasurable. You can know, scientifically, that the plateau has edges, and still feel that the meadow continues beyond sight into a soft, ancient forever. Sleep often comes through such feelings, when knowledge loosens and sensation takes the lead. A faint wind crosses the rise, bringing a cooler touch to your face. It has traveled over wet stone and open grass, and it carries their clean scent with it. The grasses answer in a low wash of sound, steady and unhurried. We stand inside that sound until it becomes almost indistinguishable from breathing. Below the rise, another patch of shrubs waits in the mist. We walk toward it slowly, and the shrubs take shape as we approach. Their branches are low and tangled, their leaves small, firm and wet. Some may be relatives of heaths or other hardy summit plants, adapted to poor acidic soils, though tonight their names are less important than their presence. Each shrub makes a small shelter in the open meadow. Under its leaves the air is stiller. Fallen fragments gather, soil may be slightly deeper. Tiny animals may find cover during cold, wet hours. The shrub is not large, but it changes the conditions immediately around it, creating a softened pocket in a landscape of exposure. You can feel the pocket as we pass close. The wind drops for a moment. The smell becomes greener, more leafy. Droplets fall from the outer leaves but remain suspended deeper inside. This tiny difference is enough to remind you that shelter does not always require walls. Sometimes it is made by a few low branches and patient leaves. The TEPUI summit meadows are full of these mild shelters. A crack shelters a root. A stone shelters moss from wind on one side. A plant cup shelters water. A hollow shelters peat. Cloud shelters the entire summit from the sharpness of open sun. The landscape protects by softening, not by closing itself away. We move through the shrubs and into another open sweep. The sky above has darkened again, and the stars are gone. Mist has become the ceiling. It lowers without pressure, just enough to make the world feel held. The meadow's surface shines here and there, as if small pieces of the sky have been set into the ground. The shine comes from water gathered in shallow depressions. Some depressions are no larger than a footprint, others wider than a sleeping body. Their shapes follow the uneven sandstone beneath the peat and vegetation. Where rock dips, water lingers. Where water lingers, life gathers differently. Where life gathers, the surface changes again. This slow feedback gives the summit its patterned calm. Nothing is arranged by design, yet everything feels placed. You can sense how the meadow has adjusted to itself over a long time, each element responding to the others with patient accuracy. The result is not symmetry, but balance. We step around a larger depression filled with dark water. Its edges are fringed with moss and small sedges. A few stiff leaves rise from the shallows. If daylight were here, you might see the warm brown color of the water, tinted by organic compounds. At night, it is simply dark and reflective, a quiet eye in the ground. Small wetland pools like this may host insect larvae, microorganisms, and other tiny forms that endure fluctuating conditions. Some may hatch quickly when water is abundant. Some may wait through dry intervals in resistant stages. Their lives are timed to the summit's rhythm of rain and drying, cloud and clearing, fullness and release. You listen beside the pool. There is no obvious animal sound now, only the light movement of air and occasional drops from nearby leaves. But the absence of sound does not feel vacant. It feels like a deep inhalation held gently by the meadow. Not tense, simply paused. We continue along the pool's edge, where the moss is thick, but the ground beside it is firmer. Your steps are careful, the pool remains undisturbed. A faint ripple moves across its surface from the wind, not from us. It reaches the mossy margin and dissolves without a trace. The night has become a study in dissolving traces. Footprints soften as water rises back into them. Sounds fade into mist. Reflections break and return. The shapes of stones appear, blur, and disappear. Even thoughts lose their outlines here, becoming part of the same slow weather moving over the TEPUI summit meadows. Ahead, a low line of rock forms a natural threshold. We cross it slowly, stepping from damp peat onto sandstone. The rock is broad and gently sloped, with thin streams of water spreading across it. In the faint light, the surface looks almost polished, though your feet feel its fine grain and shallow ridges. Water on exposed sandstone can move in sheets after rain, then concentrate into grooves as the surface guides it. Over time, slight differences become more pronounced. A tiny hollow deepens, a seam widens, a channel darkens with organic stains. The summit's open rock is a page written by water, but its script is slow and nearly silent. You watch the thin water sheet divide around a raised grain, rejoin below it, and continue toward the meadow. It is a small motion but deeply restful. There is no conflict in it. The water simply meets what is there and adjusts. It keeps moving without force, carrying a lesson so gentle it almost disappears. We follow the sloping stone upward, away from the wetter basin. The air grows a little clearer as we rise. The mist thins at shoulder height, revealing a few more shapes ahead. Low stone mounds, scattered plants, dark seams of moss, and another pool farther on. The summit keeps repeating its materials, but never its exact arrangement. This is how the TEPUI summit meadows hold attention across long hours. They do not offer sudden novelty, they offer deep variation. The same humble elements return in new proportions, like a quiet melody played by rain, rock, and vegetation. The sleepy mind can follow without strain, recognizing and releasing each form as it comes. At the top of the stone slope, we find a place where lichen covers the rock in pale crusts. The colors are muted in the night, but you can sense their dryness compared with the moss below. Lichens are slow partnerships, fungi and photosynthetic companions living together on surfaces where other life may struggle. On exposed summit stone, they are often among the first patient settlers. They can weather rock chemically and physically, holding moisture, trapping dust, and contributing to the earliest stages of soil formation. Their growth is slow, sometimes almost unimaginably slow by ordinary standards. Yet the TEPUI summit meadows owe part of their living skin to these quiet pioneers, spread thinly over stone like old breath. You kneel beside a lichen patch without touching it. Its surface appears flat, but close attention reveals tiny ridges, crusts, and branching margins. It is a landscape smaller than a fingertip. The summit's ancientness repeats again at this scale, where slow growth and weathered stone meet in a patient bond. The wind passes, and the lichen remains. The moss below trembles. The grasses whisper. This difference in movement helps you feel the variety of textures around us. Not everything responds to wind the same way. Some things bend, some hold, some glisten, some absorb. The meadow is a field of different forms of receiving. We stand and continue across the lichen-marked stone. A shallow groove leads us toward another pocket of vegetation. The groove is wet, and tiny plants have rooted along its edges, where water collects just enough to soften the rock's austerity. Their leaves are arranged close to the surface, as if listening to the stone. Plants that grow in such cracks may benefit from trapped organic matter and slightly deeper moisture. Their roots enter narrow spaces, anchoring them against runoff and wind. They live in the summit's smallest opportunities. To notice them is to understand that abundance here is often hidden in precision rather than size. You step beside them and feel a quiet respect that does not need to become dramatic. A small plant in a crack is not a symbol forced upon the landscape. It is simply alive where conditions allow. That simplicity is what makes it peaceful. The meadow does not turn its lives into lessons, but lessons arise if we listen gently. The groove widens and leads us back into soft ground. We leave the exposed rock, and the sound of our steps changes again. Peat mutes everything. The grasses close around our ankles. Mist thickens near the surface. A damp smell rises, rounder and darker than the clean scent of stone. This return to softness feels like entering another room of the summit. The TEPUI summit meadows are not divided by walls, but by changes in touch, sound, and moisture. Your body knows the transition immediately. The mind follows, slowly naming what the feet already understood. Wet ground, low plants, sheltered air, dark water nearby. A small call comes from the grass, brief and delicate. It may be a frog hidden in the damp vegetation. We pause, not to search, but to allow the sound to fade completely. When it does, the silence that follows feels larger. The little voice has shown the size of the night by appearing once and leaving. Frogs of these high summits often live close to moisture, using small pools, moss mats, or leaf-held water, depending on species and place. Some TEPUI amphibians have very limited ranges, shaped by isolation and climate. Their calls can be small, and their lives can unfold almost entirely within these wet high meadows. To hear one is to hear the summit speaking softly through a small body. You imagine it hidden somewhere beneath the grasses, its skin damp in the cool air, its world made of stems, moss, and darkness. The thought is tender because it is so contained. A whole life can belong to a narrow band of wet plants on an old stone mountain. A whole world can be close enough to fit beneath your lowered hand. We move again, and the frog, if it was a frog, remains unseen. That seems right. The meadow does not owe us its secrets. It shares enough through sound, scent, and atmosphere. The rest can stay folded into the wet vegetation where it belongs. The ground ahead becomes uneven with small hummocks. These raised mounds may form from plant growth, root mats, peat accumulation, or subtle stone beneath. They give the surface a quilted texture. Water gathers between them. Plants on top may be drier than those in the hollows only inches away. The summit's differences remain small but meaningful. You step from hummock to hummock, slow and balanced. Each one feels slightly different underfoot. Some are springy with roots. Some are firm with hidden stone. Some hold moss that compresses gently and rises again. The path becomes a sequence of soft negotiations, and your body settles further into careful movement. Around us, the mist glows faintly again. The light is so diffuse that shadows nearly disappear. This gives the hummocks a rounded, dreamlike look, as if the meadow were breathing under a blanket. Water in the low spaces reflects the pale vapor above, and the whole hollow seems filled with a quiet, suspended brightness. Diffuse light is kind to small landscapes. It removes glare and softens contrast, allowing texture to become more important than brightness. In the TEPUI summit meadows, where surfaces are wet and colors subdued, mist light reveals details slowly. It lets you notice the gleam on a leaf, the dark line of a channel, the slight raised rim around a pool. We follow those details toward the far side of the hummock field. A patch of bare stone appears ahead, and beyond it, a darker cluster of shrubs. The path of least disturbance leads over the stone, so we take it. Your feet find steadiness again on the cool surface, and the wet softness of the hollow rests behind us. On the stone, a pattern of small pits holds water. Each pit is roundish, shallow, and dark. Some are empty of visible life. Others hold tiny plant fragments or a film at the surface. Their arrangement seems accidental, yet it tells of water's long attention to weak points in the rock. Even stone has places where it yields more easily. The science is simple in outline and immense in duration. Rainwater, organic acids, mineral grains, temperature changes, and surface structure all contribute to weathering. Small pits deepen, adjacent pits may merge, water lingers longer in the deeper ones, accelerating alteration. The summit surface becomes sculpted by patient contact. You look at the pits and feel no need to hurry through that explanation. Time itself seems to slow around them. A basin no wider than a bowl may have taken longer to form than many human histories, yet tonight it holds only a little rainwater and a blurred reflection of mist. The ancient and the immediate rest together. We cross the pitted stone and enter the shrub cluster. Here the air is still and dark. Leaves brush lightly against your sleeves. The smell becomes leafy and damp, with a faint resinous note from the shrubs. Beneath them, the ground is more sheltered, layered with fallen leaves that decompose slowly in the cool, wet conditions. Leaf litter on the summit may not vanish quickly, especially where temperatures are lower and acidity slows decay. It becomes part of the slow nutrient cycle, feeding microbes and fungi, contributing to peat, and releasing what little fertility can be held. The shrubs both need and create this small reserve. Their shelter is also their offering. You can hear droplets falling from leaf to leaf inside the cluster. The sound is close and irregular. Each drop has traveled through several surfaces before reaching the ground. The shrub breaks the rain into intervals, and the intervals soften the night. We move with them, gently, careful not to disturb more than necessary. At the far side, the shrubs open onto another meadow strip, and the air moves again. The contrast feels like a slow exhale. You step out from the leafy stillness into open dampness, and the wind touches your face. The world widens by a few yards. The hidden streamlet is gone now, replaced by scattered wetness everywhere. This scattered wetness is part of the summit's character. Water does not always gather into obvious streams. It may spread thinly through peat, cling to moss, rest in plant cups, bead on leaves, or lie in stone hollows. The TEPUI summit meadows are saturated in many forms, and each form offers a slightly different life. You breathe in and taste cloud again. It is a clean, cool taste, almost flavorless except for freshness. The night has washed every surface. There is no dust in the air, no warmth rising from pavement, no dry crackle of leaves. Only damp stone, living green, and the long, slow exhalation of mist. We walk toward a faint line where the meadow seems to slope downward. As we approach, the line becomes a shallow drainage, not yet a stream, more a broad direction of wetness. The plants here grow in elongated bands, following the way water moves after rain. Their arrangement is subtle, but once seen, it guides the eye. Landscape patterns often become visible when you stop expecting straight borders. Here, boundaries are gradients. Wet becomes wetter, thin soil becomes bare stone. Moss becomes grass, grass becomes shrub. One community blends into another, and the transition itself is where much of the meadow's beauty lives. You walk through change without crossing a hard line. The drainage carries us gently into another low zone. The mist pools around our legs. The air cools. The ground darkens. Somewhere beneath the vegetation, water begins to move audibly again. We are returning to the summit's hidden circulatory system, the small waters that keep appearing, vanishing, and reappearing beneath the meadow's quiet skin. You may feel as though we have been walking in circles, but the summit does not mind circles. Water cycles, cloud cycle, seasons cycle. The mind preparing for sleep also circles, returning to familiar images until they soften and lose their edges. The Tepui summit meadows lend themselves to that kind of return. We pause where the drainage narrows into a visible channel. This one runs through peat rather than bare stone, and its banks are soft, fringed with moss and fine roots. The water is darker here, moving slowly through a shallow cut. It carries small bits of leaf matter, each one drifting a little way, catching, then releasing. The channel's darkness comes from dissolved organic material, the same kind that stains many wetland waters. It gives the water a tea-like color when light passes through it. In the night, that color becomes simply depth. You see the edge clearly, then the center as a dark ribbon, slipping beneath the mist. We follow it for several quiet minutes. The channel curves in response to small obstacles, root mats, and slight changes in slope. It does not cut deeply, but it defines the hollow. Plants lean over it, and their reflections bend in the moving surface. Sometimes the water disappears beneath moss, continuing by sound alone. When it emerges again, it passes over a small stone step. The drop is only a few inches, becoming a soft, continuous murmur. We stop beside it. A miniature fall in the Tepui summit meadows is still a fall, still water accepting gravity, still a beginning of descent toward the cliffs and forests below. You listen to the little drop and let it fill the foreground of your hearing. It is steady, rounded, low. It does not demand attention, but it rewards it. The surrounding meadow becomes a dim frame around that sound. Wet leaves, dark grasses, mist, peat, stone. The small fall gathers them together. Water leaving these summits may eventually join larger systems, descending through ravines and waterfalls into the vast drainage networks of northern South America. But here at the start, it is intimate enough to touch with one hand. We do not touch it. We let it pass. Its journey is long, and our role is only to listen. The channel below the drop widens into a shallow run. Its banks are darker and slightly undercut in places where water has worn into the peat. Moss hangs over the edge like soft green fringe. Tiny roots appear, exposed but still alive, weaving the bank together. The structure looks delicate, yet it has endured many flows. During heavier rains, this quiet run may swell and move faster, carrying more sediment and organic matter. Then, when rain eases, it shrinks again to a thread. The plants along it must tolerate these shifts. They live with both saturation and movement, both holding and release. The meadow's calm includes these slow changes in intensity. Tonight, the run is gentle. Its surface wrinkles around small obstructions. A dark leaf turns slowly in an eddy, then slips downstream. Your gaze follows until mist and vegetation hide it. The leaf has become part of the water's story now, moving from plant to pool to channel, perhaps to cliff, perhaps to river. We step away from the bank and follow a firmer strip parallel to the water. The ground rises slightly, and the channel drops lower beside us. This gives the feeling of walking along a tiny valley. The scale is small, but the landform is complete. Ridge, bank, channel, flood margin, wet vegetation, all present in miniature. The Tepui summit meadows often carry miniature versions of larger landscapes. Valleys small enough to step across, wetlands no larger than a room, cliffs in the side of a stone basin, islands made by shrubs in wet peat, shores around pools held in rock. This smallness is not lesser, it is concentrated. You may feel your attention becoming concentrated too. The outside world is far away now. The video's voice, the slow meadow, the soft science, and the feeling of night have merged into a single downward drift. Even though the summit is high, the mind has descended into quiet layers, each one cooler and softer than the last. The channel bends toward a darker patch of vegetation, and we leave it there. Ahead lies an open stone pavement, wet and slightly sloped. It glows faintly under the mist. We step onto it, and the sound of the channel fades behind us, replaced by the almost silent spread of water over rock. The pavement is broken by cracks filled with dark soil. Some cracks are straight, following structural lines in the sandstone. Others branch and curve where weathering has widened them unevenly. Plants root in many of them, forming green seams across the stone. These seams make the rock look mended by life. In a way, it is. Life does not repair the stone by stopping erosion, but it softens the exposure. Roots, moss, and organic matter fill openings, slow water, and create conditions for more life to enter. The ancient surface becomes less bare through many small occupations. The meadow is a living cover drawn slowly over old geology. You trace one green seam with your eyes. It runs from a mossy crack to a tuft of grass, then disappears under a thin film of water. The line is simple and beautiful. It shows how life follows opportunity, not in straight conquest, but in quiet settlement. The crack offered a little shelter, and green answered. We cross the pavement slowly. The stone is slick in places, so each step remains deliberate. The coolness through your soles feels clear and grounding. Above, the mist brightens and dims as cloud thickness changes. There is no sudden shift, only a slow breathing of light through vapor. At the far edge of the pavement, we reach a field of low rosettes. Their leaves spread outward from central points, some narrow, some spoon-shaped, all beaded with water. They seem almost architectural, each plant a small design for gathering light and managing rain. In the dark, their forms read as circles, stars, and quiet green wheels. Rosette forms can help plants shed water, protect growing centers, or hold moisture depending on structure. In exposed wet places, such shapes may offer stability close to the ground. They resist wind by staying low. They manage surfaces carefully. They make beauty out of practical arrangement, which is often the most peaceful kind of beauty. You look down into one rosette and see a central cup holding a single dark drop. The drop reflects a pale patch of mist. Its surface is perfectly still. That one drop, held at the plant's center, seems to contain the whole summit for a moment. Cloud above, stone below, and the living form between them. The TEPUI summit meadows are full of these contained worlds, a drop in a leaf, a pool in a basin, a hollow in the peat, a crack in the stone. Each small container gathers something of the larger landscape and makes it intimate. You can rest inside that idea, because it does not ask anything difficult. We continue through the rosette field, placing our steps between plants. The ground is a mix of grit and damp organic matter. The scent is lighter here than in the peat hollows, more like rain on stone. A thin breeze moves over the low leaves, and droplets quiver without falling. At the edge of the rosette field, the meadow drops slightly into another basin. This one is broader and more open, with pools scattered across its floor. Mist lies over it in layers, and the pools appear one by one as we descend, dark ovals set among grasses and moss. The place feels very still, as though sound has settled into the water. We move down carefully, and the air grows cooler. Basins collect not only water, but sometimes colder air, especially on calm nights. The difference is subtle, but your skin notices it. The dampness feels denser. The smell of peat returns. The pools hold the pale mist like mirrors made for sleep. In the largest pool, several stems rise from the water, thin and motionless. Around them, the surface is broken by small rings from falling droplets. Each ring expands until it touches another, then both disappear. This slow pattern repeats without becoming busy. It is the gentlest kind of motion, one that deepens stillness rather than disturbing it. We sit beside the pool and let the rings come and go. The TEPUI summit meadows feel especially ancient in this basin, not because anything grand is visible, but because everything is so patient. Water falls, rings widen, moss grows, peat gathers. Stone weathers, plants adapt. The whole scene seems to have no need for witness, yet it welcomes quiet witnessing. The pool's water may be shallow, but it carries a dark reflection that gives it depth. You can see the blurred shape of mist above, and sometimes a faint movement below. Perhaps a tiny aquatic organism, perhaps a drifting fragment, perhaps only the water settling after a drop. The uncertainty is soothing because it remains gentle. Science gives us ways to understand such pools, but understanding here does not break the spell. Acidity, nutrient limitation, hydrology, substrate, microclimate, endemism, and succession are all real. They are also just different doors into the same quiet room. Tonight we enter through sensation first, then let knowledge follow softly behind. You breathe with the basin. The air seems to move less here. Your exhale vanishes into mist. The pool receives falling drops from plants along its edge. A low shrub leans over the water, its leaves almost touching. The whole scene is composed of near contacts, things close enough to influence one another without losing their own form. Near contact is how ecosystems are built. A root beside a fungal thread, a leaf above a pool, a moss mat against stone, a pollinator near a flower, a drop on a seed. These relationships may be small, but they accumulate into the living fabric of the summit. The TEPUI summit meadows are woven from such nearness. After a long pause, we stand and continue around the pool. The basin floor is too wet to cross directly, so we follow its rim. This route takes us past several smaller pools, each one slightly different in shape and vegetation. One has bare stone edges, one is nearly swallowed by moss, one has grasses growing through its center. The variety is calming because it unfolds slowly. You do not need to compare them sharply. You simply notice, receive, and move on. Bare edge, moss edge, grass-filled center, dark water, pale reflection. The details pass like slow breaths, and the meadow's repetition carries you further into rest. At the far side of the basin, the ground rises in a series of low steps. These steps are natural shelves in the sandstone, partly covered with plants. Water runs down them during rain, leaving dark streaks and pockets of moss. Tonight, only a few thin threads remain, shining softly in the misted light. We climb them gently, one step of stone at a time. The motion is slow enough to feel almost like floating upward, though the larger journey remains inward and downward into quiet. Each shelf gives a moment of firmness, each patch of moss asks for care. The summit guides our pace with its textures. From the upper shelf, the basin behind us becomes a dim, wet shape. The pools are mostly hidden by mist now. Their presence remains in memory, like closed eyes holding the afterimage of dark water. Ahead, the meadow stretches again, flatter and more open. We move toward it without needing to arrive. The TEPUI summit meadows continue to change under the same night. Here the grasses are sparse, and the stone shows through in long bands. The bands run roughly parallel, perhaps following bedding, joints, or subtle drainage lines. Between them, vegetation gathers in damp strips, making a pattern of dark green and darker rock. Geology often shows itself through vegetation this way. Plants reveal moisture, cracks, soil depth, and mineral conditions by where they choose to grow. In a place of thin soils, the living cover becomes a sensitive map of the stone beneath. The meadow is not hiding the mountain, it is translating it. You can read that translation with soft eyes. Stone band, green band, water glint, peat pocket, lichen crust, moss seam. Each phrase in the translation is simple, and together they form a long, slow language. We walk through it as if through a quiet sentence, where meaning arrives by rhythm rather than urgency. A breeze crosses the bands, and the grasses respond in small waves. The waves are not broad because the grasses are low and patchy, but they are visible enough to soothe the eye. Movement travels across the meadow in a muted shimmer, then it stops. Then another breeze begins farther off and comes toward us slowly. The wind carries no harshness. It is cool, damp, and clean. It has touched cloud, stone, and water before reaching us. When it passes your face, it leaves a faint chill that fades gradually. You may feel your breath deepen in response, as though the body recognizes the summit's instruction to slow down. We follow the green bands across the stone. In one band, small flowers appear, their petals pale against dark leaves. In another, pitcher plants stand low and open. In a third, moss dominates, thick and almost black in the night. Each band holds a slightly different answer to the same high, wet world. This is ecological sorting, but it feels like quiet arrangement. Different species find their places along gradients of water, soil, exposure, and nutrients. Competition may occur, but tonight we notice coexistence more than struggle. Each plant occupies what it can, and the meadow holds the pattern without noise. You step beside a pitcher plant and see water trembling in its cup. It reflects the mist, then the dark rim, then nothing. The cup's shape is both beautiful and useful. Its existence reminds us again that adaptation is not abstract here. It has a texture, a color, a surface that gathers droplets in the night. Beyond the bands, the meadow becomes softer again. The stone sinks beneath peat. The plants grow denser. Our pace slows further because the ground asks for it. Each careful step feels like a small act of listening. The summit is telling us where weight can rest and where it should not. We come upon a narrow animal track, barely visible, pressed through low vegetation. It may have been made by repeated movement of small creatures, or it may simply be a drainage line shaped by water. We do not need certainty. The line offers a path for the eye and perhaps for the imagination through the wet plants. If animals use such lines, they do so quietly. A small mammal, a bird moving on foot, an amphibian passing between shelters, insects traveling along stems and ground. The meadow's traffic is not loud. It leaves slight traces, temporary openings, faint disturbances that weather and growth soon soften again. You can feel the peace of traces that do not insist on permanence. In the TEPUI summit meadows, many marks fade quickly under rain and mist. A pressed blade rises, a footprint fills with water. A fallen petal becomes peat. Change does not erase meaning. It lets the landscape remain gentle. We follow the faint line only a short way before it vanishes into denser moss. There, the ground is too soft, and we turn toward firmer stone. The decision is quiet and practical. Care is part of the narration now, a way of moving through an ecosystem that grows slowly and holds its living surface close. As we reach the stone, a light rain begins, though it is difficult to separate from mist at first. The droplets are fine, cool, and almost weightless. They touch your face, your hands, the leaves, the exposed sandstone. The sound is faint, a soft increase in texture rather than a clear rainfall. Rain on the TEPUI summit meadows does not feel like interruption. It feels like return. The plants were already wet, the stone was already shining, the pools were already listening. Now the sky simply adds more of itself, drop by drop, to a landscape built from receiving it. We stand still under the fine rain. Water gathers on your sleeves and darkens them. Droplets form along the edges of nearby leaves, merging, growing heavier, then falling. The stone beneath us changes color, becoming deeper brown and red where fresh wetness spreads. The scent of mineral rain rises cleanly from the surface. This scent is one of the calmest things in the world. Wet stone, old sandstone, cool air, a little peat at the edges. It carries no urgency, only freshness and age together. You breathe it in, and the night seems to move a little deeper into your lungs. The rain strengthens slightly, but never becomes hard. It makes the meadow shine more evenly. Small channels begin to wake on the stone, threads of water appearing where moments before there was only dampness. The pools receive new rings. Moss darkens. Pitcher cups fill a little more. Every surface participates. You can watch the hydrology of the summit become visible in real time. Water lands, gathers, divides, sinks, pools, and moves. It follows the old routes, because the routes have been made by earlier rains. The landscape remembers through shape, and tonight's rain reads that memory as it travels. We begin walking again, slower now because the stone is slick. The rain touches everything with a steady whisper. It is not loud enough to wake the mind. It is the kind of sound that helps thoughts dissolve, a soft, continuous veil drawn across the meadow. The TEPUI summit meadows seem to disappear and become more themselves at the same time. Ahead, a shallow channel fills quickly, its water bright against the dark rock. We follow alongside it as it grows from scattered trickles into a narrow run. It slips around lichened patches, joins another thread, and moves toward lower ground. The increase is gentle, but clear. The summit is breathing out water. The plants accept the rain without movement beyond the weight of droplets. Leaves bend slightly, release water, and rise. Moss swells. Grasses lean and shine. A few flowers close more tightly, protecting their centers. The entire meadow adjusts to the rain through small gestures, each one calm and exact. We reach the edge of a wet hollow, just as the new water enters it. The hollow darkens and brightens at once, dark with saturation, bright with moving reflections. The little streamlet inside becomes more audible, a fuller murmur beneath the falling rain. Still, it remains gentle, more like a lullaby than a stream. You stand at the rim and feel the rain cool your face. The air smells richer now, stirred by fresh water. Peat, moss, leaves, and stone all release something into the night. The scents blend without heaviness. They make the meadow feel alive in a slow, breathing way. Rain also brings nutrients, though in small amounts, from the atmosphere. Dust, dissolved compounds, and organic traces may arrive with it. On nutrient-poor summits, even minor inputs can matter. Water is never just water here. It is transport, connection, disturbance, renewal, and the medium through which the meadow holds itself together. The rain continues, and the hollow begins to overflow along its narrow outlet. We watch the water find that exit. It does not hesitate. It follows the lowest line, a path shaped before we arrived and long before this night. The first overflow slips over moss, then stone, then joins the channel beyond. This moment is quiet, but it contains the whole logic of the summit. Receive, hold, release, receive again. The TEPUI summit meadows live by that rhythm, and as you listen to it, your own body may echo it. Breath enters, breath rests, breath leaves. Nothing more is needed. We move along the outlet, staying on the firmer stones beside it. The rain has made every surface luminous in the dim light. Water runs now in several little strands, converging and separating across the rock. The sound is fuller than before, yet still soft enough to blend with the mist. A droplet falls from your hair or hood, joining the water below. For a moment, the boundary between observer and weather feels thin. You are not separate from the wetness. You are carrying it, feeling it, breathing it, and moving within it. The summit's atmosphere has entered the scene completely. We keep walking, and the rain steadies into a fine, even fall. The meadow absorbs it without surprise. These plants know rain the way coastal stones know waves, through repetition and shaping. Their forms are records of wetness. Their tissues are built for it. Their positions on the summit reflect its patterns. Some roots may need oxygen despite saturated conditions, and plants in wet soils often develop ways to survive low aeration. Some avoid the wettest places, others tolerate them. Some grow on raised mounds where water drains just enough. The meadow's arrangement is partly a conversation between roots and water, hidden below what we see. You cannot see that conversation directly, but you can feel its result in the surface texture. Raised mats underfoot, soggy hollows, firm seams, open stone. Every step crosses an answer. The summit's science is not distant from your body. It comes through touch, balance, temperature, and sound. The outlet stream reaches a sloping pavement and spreads into thin fans. Rain adds to it from above, so the whole stone begins to shine with moving water. We pause at the upper edge and watch the fans descend. They divide around tiny ridges, braid together, and slip into cracks where moss waits dark and full. This kind of overland flow may be brief after rain, but it helps shape exposed surfaces. It moves fine sediment, redistributes organic matter, and feeds lower hollows. It also shows how little soil covers some parts of the summit. The rock is never far away. The meadow's living skin is thin, and that thinness makes every layer visible. You feel the ancient stone through the rain's freshness. That contrast is soothing. New water on old rock. Brief sound on long silence. Small movement on enduring form. The TEPUI summit meadows exist in these contrasts, not as conflict, but as balance held gently through time. The rain softens again, returning toward mist. The stronger flows begin to lessen, though water continues to move along the paths it awakened. Droplets still fall from plants, creating a delayed rain beneath the rain. The meadow releases what it has received in stages, each leaf, moss mat, and hollow, with its own timing. We walk into that after-rain hush. It is one of the most peaceful moods of the summit. The air is saturated and clean. The ground shines everywhere. Sounds are close but subdued. The mist hangs low, filled with the scent of renewed wetness. You may feel wrapped in the landscape's slow exhale. A small bird stirs somewhere in the shrubs, perhaps disturbed by the rain's passing or by its own night rhythm. We hear only a faint rustle, then stillness. Birds on TEPUI summits may feed among shrubs, edges, and open patches, using the mosaic of habitats in different ways. Tonight, the bird remains unseen, another quiet presence held by the meadow. The unseen feels important here. So much of this landscape is not immediately visible. Roots, microbes, small animals, buried peat layers, water moving under moss, evolutionary histories held in genes. The mist makes that invisibility physical. It reminds us that not seeing is not the same as absence. The summit is full, even when it appears almost empty. We continue across wet ground, and a cooler current of air passes through the basin. It carries the after-rain chill along the surface. Your skin notices, then settles. The meadow's temperature remains mild but cool, especially compared with the warm forests below. This coolness shapes metabolism, growth, decomposition, and the pace of life. Slow decomposition allows organic matter to build in places. Slow growth produces compact forms. Slow weathering continues under frequent wetness. The word slow returns again and again because it belongs here. It is not laziness or lack. It is the summit's tempo. It is also the tempo of sleep. You step onto a stone, pause, and look back. The path behind us has vanished into dark wet grasses and mist. No clear line remains. This disappearance is comforting. It means the meadow has closed softly after our passing. It keeps its own form, and we continue without leaving a story too sharp behind us. Ahead, the land rises toward another broad, flat area. We climb gradually through low plants shining from the recent rain. The slope is slight, but your body feels the change. The air begins to move more freely. The peat thins. Stone returns underfoot. Water runs past us in tiny lines, descending toward the basin we are leaving. At the upper flat, the summit opens into a wet stone garden. Low vegetation occupies cracks and shallow pockets, while most of the surface is exposed sandstone. Rainwater lies in thin films, reflecting the mist. The scene is sparse, but not barren. Every living patch seems carefully placed, and the spaces between them feel equally meaningful. Sparse landscapes can be deeply restful because they give the eye room. Here, the room is not empty. It is filled with subtle texture. Grain of stone, lichen crust, moss seam, water film, small plant cluster. You see each thing with less competition. The mind settles because the scene does not crowd it. The TEPUI summit meadows include these stone gardens as part of their larger quiet. Meadow and pavement, wetland and rock, shrub and pool all belong to the summit mosaic. We have moved among them for a long time now, and each has carried the same mood in a different form. Dampness, patience, isolation, and ancient stone. We cross the stone garden slowly. Fine water trails run beside our steps. A small cluster of plants grows in a crack to our left, their leaves holding beads of rain. To our right, a lichen patch spreads like a pale cloud fallen onto rock. Above us, the actual cloud presses low, and the two clouds seem to answer each other across scale. The image is simple and soft, cloud above, lichen below, both pale, both slow in their own ways. One moves through the sky, one grows across stone. The summit holds them together without comment. You hold them together for a moment too, and then let the image drift onward. As we near the far side of the pavement, the stone breaks into shallow ridges. Water collects between them, forming narrow, dark lines. Some lines are filled with moss, others with open water. The ridges guide our steps. We move along them, as if walking the back of some ancient sleeping surface. Careful and quiet. The ridges may reflect erosion along joints or variations in the sandstone. Over time, softer or more fractured parts wear lower, while more resistant areas remain raised. Plants then colonize the lowered wetter seams, emphasizing the pattern. Geology creates opportunity, and vegetation reveals it. The meadow is again the mountain's translation. You feel that translation through your feet as you step from ridge to ridge. Raised stone is firm and cool, moss seam is springy and wet. Open water is avoided and admired. The rhythm is slow and the caution is soothing. It keeps the body present in the exact place where it is. The mist grows thicker at the far edge, and we enter it. The stone garden fades behind us. For several minutes, only immediate shapes appear. A plant clump, a dark groove, a wet ledge, a shallow pool. The rest is grey. You can let the grey become a kind of pillow for the mind, softening the world's edges until only calm remains. In that grey, the TEPUI summit meadows feel almost suspended outside ordinary location. Yet the sensory details keep us grounded. Cool rainwater on stone, damp air at the mouth, moss scent rising from a crack, the soft sound of our careful steps, the distant murmur of water moving somewhere below. We continue, and the mist begins to thin at ground level. A carpet of low vegetation appears, dotted with small pale flowers and dark water pockets. This area feels especially delicate. The plants are close together, their forms small and precise. We slow even more, choosing only exposed stones and firm margins. Delicacy in these meadows is not weakness. It is the visible result of specialization. A plant may be delicate because it has grown exactly as much as the summit permits. A flower may be small because smallness is efficient in wind, rain, and poor soil. A root system may be shallow because the soil itself is shallow. Delicate forms can be durable when matched to place. You look at the flowers and see droplets gathered in their throats. Their petals bend under the water's weight but do not break. When a droplet falls, the petal lifts slightly. The movement is tiny, but it feels like a breath. Around them, the meadow remains still. The night continues long and unhurried. There is no sign yet of dawn. The summit holds us in its middle hours, when time seems least divided. You may feel the script becoming less like a journey and more like a rocking motion, moving between sensory detail and quiet science, between what we feel and what the meadow is. This motion is intentional in the landscape itself. Water moves between sky and stone. Nutrients move between insect, plant, soil, and pool. Heat moves slowly out of rock into night air. Cloud moves across the plateau and settles into leaves. The summit is made of exchanges, and all of them are soft enough to sleep beside. We pass through the delicate patch and reach a low, rounded stone. It is large enough to sit on, dry only on its uppermost curve, though still cool from the rain. We rest there for a while. Around us, wet plants lean close. The stone beneath us feels like the exposed back of the ancient mountain, steady under the living skin. From this seat, the meadow's sounds gather quietly. A drop from a shrub, a hidden trickle, a faint wind, another drop from another leaf. These sounds arrive irregularly, but together they create a slow pattern. Your breathing can settle between them, not matching exactly, simply resting within the same hush. The TEPUI summit meadows at night are not silent because nothing is happening. They are quiet because most happenings are small, wet, and patient. The scale of action has lowered, the tempo has stretched. You are invited to lower and stretch with it, until the difference between listening and resting becomes very slight. After resting, we stand and move on again. The stone's coolness remains in memory against your body. The meadow ahead glistens after the rain, each surface holding a little light. We walk toward a faintly darker band that may be another drainage line, and as we approach, the ground begins to soften underfoot. The darker band is indeed wet, though no open channel appears at first. Water is moving through the vegetation rather than above it. You can hear it only by pausing. A submerged murmur passes beneath moss and roots. This hidden movement makes the surface feel alive, as though the meadow is thinking slowly under its green skin. Subsurface flow in shallow organic layers can feed channels, pools, and seeps down slope. It may be guided by rock surfaces below, by root mats, or by small differences in permeability. We do not need technical detail beyond that. It is enough to know that water has more paths than sight reveals. The summit's quietness includes hidden routes. We follow the wet band across the meadow. The plants here are lush by summit standards, though still low. Moss is thick, grass is soft, rosettes frequent. A few pitcher plants rise from the mat, their cups refilled by the recent rain. Each one catches darkness, water, and the faint reflection of passing mist. The cups remind you of listening. They are open, receptive, shaped to hold what arrives. The whole meadow is like that tonight, open to rain, open to cloud, open to slow change. As listeners, we become a little cup-like too, holding the atmosphere without needing to do anything with it. A small insect lands on a nearby leaf, pauses, and disappears into the dark vegetation. Its movement is brief and almost weightless. You may wonder where it goes, what it senses, how it navigates the wet night. Then the question itself softens, because wonder here does not need an answer immediately. The TEPUI summit meadows keep many answers in reserve. Their species histories, their local adaptations, their long climate records, their hidden hydrology, all remain partly veiled. That veil is not frustration tonight. It is comfort. It allows the place to remain larger than our grasp, while still close enough to feel. We step onto a line of stones crossing the wet band. Each stone is dark, slick, and rounded by weather. They make a natural passage, perhaps left where water washed finer material away. We move from one to the next with measured care. Between them, water glints and moss swells. At the far side, the ground rises again, and the wet band fades behind us into mist. The repeated rising and lowering is gentle, like breathing through the landscape. No slope is steep, no transition is abrupt. The summit undulates softly, and our attention follows, up to stone, down to peat, across water, back to grass. This slow movement through variation keeps the script from needing any strong turn. The place itself provides all the motion required. The listener can drift, wake, hear a detail, drift again, and still remain in the same coherent world. The TEPUI summit meadows stay present through repeated anchors of mist, stone, water, and low living forms. Ahead, another patch of open rock appears, but this one is darker and more broken. Several cracks form a loose network across its surface. Moss fills the deepest ones, and small plants root at their intersections. The pattern resembles a quiet map of green rivers on dark land. We enter it slowly. Crack networks can develop where rock contracts, fractures, or weathers along structural weaknesses. Water enters, expands the openings through chemical alteration and mechanical removal of grains, and life follows. Over long periods, these cracks become corridors for soil and roots. The meadow begins in the lines where stone has opened. You look at the intersections where several cracks meet and see that plants are denser there. It makes sense. More water, more trapped particles, more shelter from wind, perhaps slightly deeper rooting space. The summit's geometry creates small centers of life. They are not dramatic, but they are quietly generous. We walk along one crack that is wide enough to hold a thread of water. The water reflects the pale mist above, so the crack appears lit from within. Tiny leaves lean over its edges. Their tips almost meet, making a green arch above the dark line. The image lasts only a few steps, then the crack narrows and disappears. The disappearing is part of the beauty. Nothing in the meadow needs to remain available for long. A view opens, closes. A sound rises, fades. A pool appears, then mist hides it. The mind learns to receive without clutching. That is one of the softest movements towards sleep. We leave the crack network and enter lower vegetation again. The recent rain has made everything cooler. Your skin feels damp, but the sensation has become ordinary now, part of the environment rather than an event. The night presses no urgency. The summit keeps its slow pulse. Somewhere far off, beyond the mist, water may be falling over a cliff in a long white ribbon. We cannot hear it clearly, or perhaps we hear only the faintest murmur. The thought of it remains gentle. The water that begins in these meadows may travel that way, leaving the summit in spray and descending towards forest. But here, it is still near the source, small and intimate. The TEPUI summit meadows are landscapes of beginnings. Beginning streams, beginning soils, beginning adaptations in isolated populations, beginning droplets on leaf tips, Even old processes keep beginning again with each rain. This repeated beginning gives the summit a calm freshness, despite its immense age. You can feel that freshness in the air after rain. Every surface seems newly made, although it belongs to deep time. The sandstone shines as if polished in the last hour. The moss looks newly green. The pools seem newly filled. The flowers hold droplets like first light, though night remains around them. We pass another small flower patch, and this time the blossoms are mostly closed. Their petals overlap gently, protecting what is inside. Sleep exists among plants too, not in the same way as ours, but in rhythms of opening and closing, growth and rest, light response and night chemistry. The meadow has its own nocturnal lowering. You may let your own inner petals close a little. Let the sounds become soft. Let the science become background. Let the images continue without requiring effort. Wet stone, low shrubs, moss seams, dark water, pale flowers, rain returning to mist. Each image is enough, and none needs to be held tightly. The path of firmer ground curves around a shallow wetland and brings us toward a broader rock shelf. The shelf is partly covered with flowing water from the recent rain, but some raised areas remain passable. We step onto one and pause. From here, the meadow seems to spread in every direction as a dark, breathing surface. The rock shelf gives a sense of exposure. The wind touches us more fully. The mist thins, then thickens, then thins again. For a moment, we glimpse the outline of a distant stone rise, then it vanishes. This partial seeing feels like listening to a story told in a very soft voice, where some words are clear and others are left to the dark. On the shelf, the water forms branching patterns. Tiny rivulets split around raised patches and merge in lower grooves. Their movement is quiet, but visible, like silver threads drawn across black cloth. We follow one thread with our eyes until it pours into a moss-filled crack. The moss receives it without sound. Such receiving surfaces slow runoff and help retain moisture on the summit. Without them, more water would move quickly across bare rock and away. With moss, roots, peat, and plant litter, the meadow holds water longer, releasing it gradually. The summit's softness moderates the sky's abundance. This is another reason the landscape feels calming. It does not reject what comes. It does not let everything rush through at once. It receives, slows, holds, and releases. That pattern is almost identical to rest, when the body receives the day, lets it settle, and slowly releases what it no longer needs. We leave the shelf and descend into another low meadow. The rain has stopped fully now, and only drip remains. Drip from leaves, drip from grasses, drip from the edges of stone. The air is so saturated that sound seems cushioned. Even the movement of your steps feels softened before it reaches your ears. A faint pale line appears low in the mist, not dawn, but perhaps a thinner band of cloud reflecting moonlight. It gives the meadow just enough shape to guide us. We walk toward it, and the ground becomes a mixture of small stones and wet plants. The stones are embedded in peat, their tops slick and cool. The embedded stones may be remnants of weathered sandstone surfaces, exposed where soil is thin or water has removed finer matter. Around each one, plants arrange themselves according to moisture and depth. The result is a stippled texture, stone and green, firmness and softness, ancient mineral and living mat. You step from stone to stone when possible. The movement becomes meditative. Each placement is slow, balanced, quiet. The meadow asks for attention but not tension. Your body knows the difference. Attention can be soft. It can guide you without tightening around the task. The TEPUI summit meadows teach soft attention constantly. To notice a fragile plant and step around it. To hear hidden water and move beside it. To feel slick stone and slow down. To smell peat and understand wetness before seeing it. The landscape becomes a teacher without saying anything. We reach the pale line in the mist and discover it is a long, shallow pool reflecting a brighter patch of cloud. Its shape is narrow and irregular, following a depression in the stone beneath the vegetation. The surface is calm, broken only by occasional drops from overhanging stems. It looks like a silver ribbon laid across the dark meadow, We followed the ribbon along its edge. The water is clearer near the margin, where submerged moss and small roots are visible. Toward the center, it darkens. A few tiny bubbles cling to stems. The pool seems motionless, but slow exchanges occur across every surface. Gases, dissolved compounds, warmth, coolness, and the slight movement of microscopic life. At one point, the pool narrows until grasses almost meet above it. Their reflections create a tunnel of dark vertical lines. We stop there and listen. The sound is very close, mostly droplets falling into water. Each drop makes a small note, then a ring, then silence. The rhythm is irregular enough to feel natural, gentle enough to become lulling. The water ribbon eventually bends away into thicker vegetation, and we let it go. The meadow ahead rises gently, and the plants become shorter. We are leaving that wet line for a drier patch, though dry is always relative here. Even the raised ground gleams. Even the exposed stone carries beads of water. The summit remains saturated in spirit. As we climb, the scent shifts again. Less peat, more stone, a faint green note from wet leaves crushed only by rain, not by us. The air opens, and the wind returns lightly. You can feel how the summit uses scent to mark its changes, each micro-landscape carrying a different balance of water, plant, and rock. We arrive on the raised patch and pause. Around us, small cushioned plants form rounded mounds. Their surfaces are dense, tight, and wet with fine droplets. Cushion growth can help plants reduce exposure, conserve moisture, and create a warmer or more stable microclimate within the mound. In cold or windy high places, such forms can be quietly effective. You lean close and see that a cushion is not a single smooth thing, but a community of tiny shoots packed together. Each shoot holds miniature leaves. Droplets rest among them like clear beads. The mound appears simple from above, but intimate up close. The summit often rewards this kind of lowering of the gaze. Cushion plants can also create habitat for other small organisms, trapping organic matter and moderating harsh conditions near the ground. A seed may lodge at the edge. A tiny insect may shelter between shoots. Moisture may persist inside even when surrounding surfaces dry. A small mound becomes a small climate. We move around the cushions carefully. Their slowness deserves care. In landscapes where growth is limited, damage may take a long time to repair. So our imagined steps remain light, placed on stone, bare patches, or firm ground. The calm walk is also a respectful walk. The mist thins a little more, and the rock ahead appears in a broad, dark plain. Beyond it, shapes of low shrubs make a wavering horizon. There is still no true distance, but the world feels slightly wider. The night has passed through rain and returned to quiet dampness. The meadow is refreshed, and we are quieter with it. We cross the broad plain. Water films move beneath us, but shallowly. The stone's grain shows through. Fine sand has collected in small pockets, and in some of those pockets, tiny seedlings grow. They are so small that they seem less like plants and more like green intentions. The summit holds them with extraordinary patience. Seedling establishment on TEPUI summits can be uncertain, shaped by moisture, temperature, substrate, and chance. Many seeds may land where they cannot survive. Some find a crack, a sheltered moss edge, or a pocket of organic matter. When they do, the meadow adds another small point to its living pattern. You notice one seedling growing beside a lichen patch, its leaves no larger than raindrops. The image is almost too quiet to describe. Old lichen, young plant, ancient stone, fresh rain. 4 timescales meet in one small place, and none of them disturbs the others. They simply coexist, and the coexistence feels restful. We move on, leaving the seedling to its night. The shrubs ahead gradually take form, and we pass among them. Their wet leaves brush the air near your shoulders. Some branches hold droplets in rows along their undersides. When the wind moves, a few drops fall together, making a soft patter on the ground. Inside the shrub patch, the temperature feels slightly less exposed. The air is stiller, and the smell of leaves is stronger. You can imagine small birds sheltering here during rain, or insects tucked beneath leaves, or frogs moving through the damp litter below. The shrub patch is a modest refuge, another of the summit's quiet rooms. We do not stay long, but the room leaves an impression. When we step out, the open meadow feels wider and cooler again. This contrast, repeated many times, becomes part of the night's rhythm. Shelter and exposure, peat and stone, pool and rise, mist and clearing. Each pair rocks gently against the other. The Tepui summit meadows are calm because their contrasts are muted. Nothing switches sharply. The transitions are gradual, and the senses have time to follow. This is why the landscape suits a sleep narration. It gives change without shock, variety without agitation, and depth without darkness becoming heavy. We walk through low grass, now shining less as droplets begin to settle or fall. The after-rain sheen remains, but it is quieter. Some water has entered soil, some has moved into channels, some has collected in plant cups, some still hangs in the air as mist. The rainfall has distributed itself through the summit. That distribution is the summit's hydrological memory in action. Where water goes depends on rock, slope, vegetation, prior saturation, and the shape of countless small surfaces. A single rain becomes many pathways. The meadow receives it as a whole, then divides it into intimate journeys. You may feel yourself receiving the narration in the same way. Some words remain clear, some become background, some gather into images, some flow away. That is natural for a sleep script. The meaning is not held in every sentence, but in the atmosphere they create together, like droplets becoming mist around the meadow. We come to a small, clear run of water crossing the path ahead. It is newly strengthened by the rain, moving over reddish stone with a smooth sound. We step over it where the banks are firm. Before crossing, we pause and look upstream. The run emerges from darkness among low plants, already formed before it becomes visible. Downstream, it slides toward a notch in the stone and disappears. The distance between appearing and disappearing is only a few yards, yet within it the water has presence. It glints, moves, carries, and sounds. Many things in the Tepui summit meadows are like that. Briefly visible, fully real, and then hidden again. We cross and continue into a quieter stretch where the ground is firmer. The mist has lifted slightly, allowing a pale suggestion of sky above the cloud layer. No stars are visible now, only a softer grayness overhead. The night may be leaning toward its later hours, though dawn has not yet begun. Time remains unmarked. In this unmarked time, the meadow seems to rest after rain. The streams are still active, but the falling has stopped. Plants hold water, pools settle. The air no longer thickens with new droplets, only with lingering vapor. Your body senses the change and relaxes further. The event has passed without drama. A gentle slope leads us toward a higher patch of stone and cushioned vegetation. We follow it slowly. The slope is barely enough to quicken the breath, but we keep our pace even. The summit's calm depends on not forcing movement. Upward or downward, wet or dry, open or sheltered, we move as if each step were a quiet word. At the higher patch, we turn and look back into the misted basin. Its pools are hidden now, but we know they are there. The knowledge is enough. The Tepui summit meadows have become layered in memory as well as space. Each wet hollow we crossed remains somewhere behind us, full of dark water, moss, and the soft aftermath of rain. Ahead, another expanse waits, low and silvered, with scattered stones and small shining plants. We continue toward it, not to finish anything, but because the summit still opens gently before us. The air is cool on your face, the old sandstone is steady beneath the living surface, and the mist keeps moving through the meadow like a breath that has forgotten all hurry.